Chapter 614. The higher the grade of the golden core, the more and thicker the golden core shackles. Ziyue was taken aback and could not help but feel shocked. He suddenly thought of himself. He had formed the amethyst golden core. 12 great Tao scars. Furthermore, each of the 12 great Tao scars was extremely large and thick, almost enveloping his entire golden core. The thin intersections that extended seemed to contain endless wonders and were the manifestation of the great Tao. However, looking at it now, was it not like a giant net that had enveloped his entire golden core? That's right. It is said that above the first grade golden core, there is the legendary amethyst golden core. The strength of those who possess the amethyst golden core is even more terrifying. Usually, when one reaches the peak of the golden core realm, they will have the combat power of a regal or even a half step into the primordial soul realm. However, the golden core shackles on their bodies are one more than a first grade golden core. They have a total of 10 golden core shackles. Furthermore, because the amethyst golden core is one of the most precious treasures in the world, the shackles on the golden core are naturally thicker and more difficult to break. It is said that in the Heavenly Spirits sect, there was once an invincible golden core expert who attained the amethyst golden core. When he released his golden core, the 10 shackles almost enveloped his entire amethyst golden core. However, even when his lifespan of 3,000 years was exhausted, there was no news of him breaking free from the shackles and breaking through to the primordial soul realm. As he spoke, perfected being unhindered sighed. The amethyst golden core had a boundless foundation and unparalleled combat power. However, the difficulty of breaking through from the golden core realm to the primordial soul realm was far greater than any of the 3 superior grade golden cores. Some people were extremely talented and had shocking combat power. However, they could not break free from the shackles and break through to the golden core realm. They could only stop there. How could the strongest golden core compare to the primordial soul realm? At the primordial soul realm, one could live for 9,000 years. They could give up their physical body and live forever. Their combat power was shocking, and they could even travel 90,000 miles in a night. Only then could they be considered to have transcended and be called immortals. Without reaching the primordial soul realm, they would be bound by their physical body. I see. Thank you for enlightening me. Ziyue cupped his hands and thanked him sincerely, but his heart couldn't help but feel heavy. Just as Junren Zongheng had said, he was an invincible expert in the Aurous Core realm. He was born in a super sect and had attained the Violet Aurous Core. He definitely did not lack resources and had the help of more than 10 primordial soul realm elders in his sect. However, before his lifespan was exhausted, he was unable to break free from the shackles and break through to the primordial soul realm. One could imagine how difficult it was. Most importantly, breaking free from the shackles was only a hurdle. After breaking free, the soul would rush out of the golden core. Only then would the heavens and earth react and send down lightning and fire. Only when the thunder fire burned the body and was baptized by the thunder tribulation could one form the primordial spirit. In other words, breaking free from the shackles was only the first step to breaking through to the immortal soul stage. However, this step alone had obstructed countless cultivators at the pinnacle of the golden core realm, as well as super experts who had proven their Tao and possessed the strength of the golden core realm. On the other hand, he had also attained the ultimate violet golden core. Furthermore, it was a perfect ultimate violet golden core. Above the golden core, there were even 12 shackles tightly wrapped around it. It's too difficult for me. Ziyue could feel how difficult it was. However, his face soon turned serious, and he revealed a look of determination. But so what if it's difficult? Since I can attain the ultimate violet golden core, I can also break free from these shackles and transcend the world. I can roam the heavens and earth with my primordial spirit. I don't believe that these shackles can really bind me for the rest of my life. His lifespan wasn't short. 3,000 years, to him, was far too long. He didn't believe that these little shackles could stop him. On the other hand, perfected being unhindered, didn't know that Ziyue's thoughts had changed so much in such a short period of time. He waved his hand and said politely, "You're too kind, Taoist friend." Then, because Ziyue was about to start receiving the inheritance, he naturally couldn't stay any longer and quickly took his leave. Ziyue watched him leave and closed the door of his secret chamber. Then, he looked at the 5 inheritances. With a sweep of his divine perception, he entered one of the inheritance steels. In an instant, the blood oath mantra was activated. Ziyue recognized that it was a blood oath to prevent others from spreading it. Even though he had come into contact with it when he received the Thunder Escape Light and other inheritances, he instinctively used the All Spirits Immortal Dismemberment technique that he had created back then. The All Spirits Immortal Dismemberment technique was created by Ziyue specifically to break the special use of oaths and blood oaths. It was extremely useful at critical moments. In an instant, Ziyue activated his ultimate violet golden core energy, and a special spiritual light silently rushed out and enveloped the blood oath. ZZZ. The power of the blood oath was immediately worn down and weakened. However, the blood oath cast by a primordial spirit realm expert was extremely mysterious and powerful, even if it was only imprinted on the inheritance steels. Soon, the power of the blood oath broke through the defense of the All Spirits Immortal Dismemberment technique and continued to rush toward him. It works. However, Ziyue's eyes lit up. He had not expected that the technique that he had created back then would really work. When he had first learned the Thunder Escape Light and the God's Physique, it had not worked at all. It had rushed into his body and forced him to swear a blood oath. However, when he thought about the fact that he had already reached the Golden Core stage and had even condensed the Amethyst Golden Core, the purity and richness of his core essence was not the slightest bit inferior to that of an ordinary powerhouse at the peak of the Golden Core stage. His heart was calm. With a different level of power, a technique that had originally been weak would naturally be able to play a huge role. As his thoughts flashed, Ziyue's movements were extremely fast. Soon, he had cast the second All Spirits Immortal Dismemberment technique. Then the third, the fourth, he did not stop and activated his ultimate Violet Golden Core energy vigorously. After a total of 5 All Spirits Immortal Dismemberment techniques had been cast, the blood oath was finally worn down. It's broken. Although I was in a hurry, my casting speed is indeed astonishing. I've finally broken the blood oath. Ziyue heaved a long sigh of relief, and his eyes lit up. He knew very well what this meant. In other words, he could freely impart the succession he had received to others without suffering any backlash. This meant that not only could he learn and use it himself, but he could also keep it as the foundation of the sect and place it in the North Nether sect for the disciples to cultivate. If I'm the only one who cultivates this technique, the cost is not too high. However, if I want to impart it as the legacy of the sect, the price will increase by 100 times. Ziyue was secretly excited. Based on this calculation, he had profited from this exchange. Chapter 6:15. With excitement in his heart, Ziyue quickly set his eyes on the second stone tablet of inheritance. Like before, he lifted the blood oath again. Then, the third, the fourth. After lifting the blood oath on the 5 stone tablets of inheritance, he also received 5 cultivation methods that could help him reach the peak of the Golden Core realm. He did not stay in the secret chamber for long. After making sure that he had memorized all 5 cultivation methods, he walked out of the secret chamber and found Spiritual Master Zhongheng. "My friend, you finished receiving the inheritance so quickly." When Spiritual Master Zhongheng saw Ziyue, he was slightly stunned and could not help but ask in surprise. It should be known that an ordinary Divine Realm cultivator would need at least half an hour to receive the inheritance of a great divine ability. As for the cultivation technique, it involved more and more things. Therefore, it would take at least 2 to 4 hours to receive the inheritance. After all, there was only one chance. No one would dare to end the comprehension without any mistakes. This time around, Ziyue needed to receive a total of 5 martial skill inheritances. Even if he didn't need an entire day, he would definitely need 6 to 10 hours. In the end, in less than an hour, he had walked out of the cave? That's right. Ziwa nodded slightly and said frankly, "Did you miss anything? This inheritance is precious. If you don't understand anything, you will need to spend more spiritual stones to comprehend it next time." Spiritual Master Zongheng kindly reminded him, "Thank you for reminding me, but I didn't miss anything," Ziwa said calmly. Seeing this, Spiritual Master Zongheng was even more surprised. He vaguely felt that Ziwa might not be the cultivator at the peak of the divine realm that he originally thought. Could it be that he is a golden core realm cultivator? As he muttered in his heart, he did not dare to be negligent. He quickly called out and handed over all the treasures that Ziwa had ordered previously. Ziwa took the storage pouch and scanned it with his divine sense. He quickly discovered that the various treasures he had ordered before, including the God Fruit, Crimson Blood Divine Flower, True Crystal Stone, Crimson Refinement Divine Stone, and various other materials, were all in full. In particular, the bottle of Primordial Spirit True Fluid, which contained 100 drops, caused him to immediately reveal a satisfied smile. Previously, his celestial spell realm was only at the deity realm, so he couldn't withstand the invasion of the Primordial Spirit True Fluid at all. This was because it was extremely easy for it to be contaminated, thus causing his divine sense to become impure. However, he was also very clear about the value of this Primordial Spirit True Fluid. Back then, when he fought with True Lord Qian Yuan, the other party also used this treasure, and his combat strength immediately increased greatly. If it weren't for the fact that he was much stronger than the other party, things might have been a little tricky for him. This time, since he had decided to enter the Star Origin Sacred Mountain, he knew that it would be filled with danger. Naturally, he had to make preparations in advance. The Primordial Spirit True Fluid was one of his trump cards. If that's the case, many thanks. After confirming that he had not missed anything, Ziwa cupped his hands and left with large strides. I wonder who this person is. He shouldn't be a 9-star divine realm expert from the Gusha mountain range. After all, I know all those experts, especially his deity token. It's a 9-star divine token, but in fact, according to the discount he used to buy these treasures, it should be a 10-star divine token. The 10-star deity token is something that only the official disciples of the 9-star Dao Palace can possess. Cultivators who can be accepted into the Dao Palace are all experts at the peak of the deity realm and have the potential to reach the golden core realm. Zongheng thought for a while and guessed that the other party was an expert from the Northern Ridge Mountain Range, Yellow Ridge Mountain Range, and other places. Zongheng, this is bad. I just received news that the Star Medallion has rung. At this moment, a cultivator hurriedly rushed over and cried out in alarm. What? The Star Medallion has rung? Zongheng's expression changed, and he hurriedly asked, "When did this happen?" The Star Medallion was a special sensing treasure of the 9-star Dao Palace. Generally, those who sensed it were the cultivators of the 9-star Dao Palace who possessed the deity token, which was roughly equivalent to the moon medallion of the 9-star Dao Palace. They could use it to roughly detect the location and direction of the surrounding Star Medallion experts. It was just that the sensing range of the Star Medallion was much wider than that of the moon medallion. Even if the Star Medallion sensed an ordinary Star Medallion expert, there wouldn't be any special reaction. After all, the 9-star Dao Palace had always kept such matters a secret. But if any Star Medallion expert had done something harmful to the 9-star Dao Palace, once it was recorded in the Star Medallion would definitely sense it and send out a warning if the cultivator came within 1,000 miles of the Star Medallion. This was also one of the 9-star Dao Palace's backup plans. 2 hours ago, the cultivator nervously glanced at Zongheng and replied in a low voice. 2 hours ago? Why are you only telling me now? Zongheng's heart skipped a beat as if he had thought of something. He suddenly looked in the direction that Ziwa had left. Could it be him? Zongheng, didn't you ask me to help you find a few beauties yesterday? I had just finished arranging them for you, but when I returned, I discovered. The cultivator hurriedly tried to explain. If a second person knows about this, just you wait. Zongheng's eyes turned cold as he snorted and hurriedly headed for the rear courtyard of the nine-star Dao Palace. Rear courtyard of the nine-star Dao Palace, cultivation hall. Zongheng hurriedly entered and quickly saw a round-faced cultivator sitting cross-legged at the front. His expression turned solemn as he hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "Zongheng greets master." This person was the palace master of the nine-star Dao Palace's Sky Mist Immortal City branch, Situ Zhongning. He was a mid-Jindan realm cultivator. Situ Zhongning slightly nodded and opened his eyes. What is it? Today, an unfamiliar cultivator with a nine-star deity medallion came to our Dao Palace. Zongheng hurriedly said with a serious expression. It's very normal for cultivators to travel the world. Is there anything strange about him? Situ Zhongning raised his eyebrows and asked casually. Yes. This time, this person directly used his deity medallion status to purchase 5 Jindan-level inheritances and a large amount of resources. The total amount of spirit stones spent, even if reduced, is still more than 2 million high-grade spirit stones. His wealth is astonishing. By the way, through the discount of the deity medallion, we also discovered that his deity medallion rank is not 9 stars, but 10 stars. He's equivalent to an official disciple of the Dao Palace. Zongheng hurriedly explained. He had intended to conceal it to lessen his mistake, but this news could not be concealed at all. Thus, he could only be frank. Oh, a junior brother from another mountain range came to our Gusha mountain range? Situ Zhongning could not help but be somewhat interested. This disciple does not know. Zongheng braced himself and said, but just now, I learned that the star medallion of our 9-star Dao Palace rang. Chapter 616. The star medallion rang? Situ Zhongning was startled. You mean the star medallion ringing has something to do with this cultivator? Do you know who he is? He didn't reveal his identity, but deliberately concealed it. However, with the star medallion ringing, I finally found out his identity. Seeing that his master didn't ask for more information, Venerable Unhindered heaved a sigh of relief. Who is it? North Deep Spiritual Master. Venerable Unhindered continued, but now that I think about it, it can only be him. The cloud-piercing mountain range isn't far from our Gusha mountain range. With his strength, he wouldn't stay in a small place like the cloud-piercing mountain range for too long. This North Deep Spiritual Master, at the peak of the God Realm, was able to go against the odds and kill an immortal. His strength far exceeds that of an ordinary Golden Core realm cultivator. Not to mention the number 1 genius in the world, at least in the God Realm in the Firmament territory, there are few who can match him. Unfortunately, he just so happened to have enmity with true monarch Qian Yuan, and even publicly killed true monarch Qian Yuan, causing his soul to scatter. After all, true Lord Qian Yuan was the palace master of the 9-star Dao Palace's branch in the cloud-piercing mountain range. Naturally, the higher-ups would be angry that he was killed. It's normal to record him in the star medallion and set a bounty on his head. Moreover, from what I know, true Lord Qian Yuan and Ancestor Feng Xian are very close. Ancestor Feng Xian can be ranked in the top 10 of the 20 primordial soul realm ancestors of the 9-star Dao Palace. Once she's angry, even if someone values North Deep Spiritual Master's talent, no one will be able to protect him. Situ Zhongning also shook his head and sighed regretfully. A disciple of the 9-star Dao Palace killing a branch palace master was already a capital offense. Not to mention, the branch palace master had a very strong background and was close to a primordial soul realm ancestor. Naturally, death was the only way out. As a member of the 9-star Dao Palace, he knew how powerful the 9-star Dao Palace was. With a bounty on his head, even if North Deep Spiritual Master had unparalleled talent and strength, he wouldn't be able to escape death. That's right, where is he now? He hurriedly asked. After leaving the 9-star Dao Palace, the other party used some method to hide the God Medallion. I didn't discover anything from the Star Medallion. However, he just left not long ago and should still be in the Sky Mist Immortal City. If we seal the entire city, we should be able to lock him in here and prevent him from escaping. Sage Unhindered hurriedly explained. A city-wide lockdown? Situ Zhengning was tempted for a moment. After all, the reward offered by the Holy Ji Palace was very generous, especially since Ziyue had killed the palace master of the cloud-piercing mountain range. In addition to the Holy Ji Palace's reward, Ancestor Fengxian had also taken out a great treasure as a reward. Even without this treasure, just a favor from old Ancestor Fengxian was already invaluable. However, after thinking about it, he quickly shook his head and said, "That's not appropriate. Let's just report it to the higher-ups and ignore the rest. The higher-ups will handle it." He was very self-aware. He wasn't sure how strong Ziyue was. However, he knew the strength of true monarch Qian Yuan. The two of them had a good relationship and had even fought several times. Although true monarch Qian Yuan's cultivation was inferior to his, he had many treasures and extraordinary means. In terms of battle strength, he was only slightly weaker than Situ Zhengning. However, such an existence had been killed by Taoist Dark North. From this, one could imagine how strong Taoist Dark North was. Not to mention, Taoist Dark North had shown his battle strength. He had escaped unscathed from the encirclement of numerous Golden Core experts, and even escaped from 2 demon monarchs above the late-stage Golden Core realm. Such battle strength and means terrified Situ Zhengning. He naturally didn't want to get involved in this mess. But now that Taoist Dark North has left, he probably won't stay in the Sky Mist Immortal City for too long. If we lose this opportunity, it will be difficult to find him again. If the higher-ups ask, Sage Unhindered couldn't help but speak with some hesitation. He was very confident in his master's strength. In addition, there were many experts of the 9-star Dao Palace in the Sky Mist Immortal City. He also knew that his master was on good terms with true monarch Guyu, who was overseeing the Sky Mist Immortal City. With the two of them working together and the suppression of the Great Formation, there was at least a 70% chance of keeping true monarch Qian Yuan here. When he thought of the generous reward and how Ziyue had casually tossed out 2 piles of 2 million high-grade spirit stones, he couldn't help but feel a little greedy. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Since Taoist Dark North dared to come to the 9-star Dao Palace after killing true monarch Qian Yuan, he must be very confident. However, he was able to calmly escape from the encirclement of nearly 10 Golden Core experts. This is enough to show his strength. Let alone me, even with the strength of the entire Sky Mist Immortal City, it's still unknown whether we can defeat him. And this is still taking into account the fact that he is still at the peak of the God Realm. If he were to make a breakthrough during this period of time, do you think he would have the ability to completely uproot the 9-star Dao Palace in our Sky Mist Immortal City? Situ Zhengning snorted coldly and glanced at Sage Unhindered with a faint smile. Sage Unhindered's face paled. He hadn't expected his master to value Taoist Dark North so much and fear him so much. He didn't dare to say anything else. As for the questions asked by the higher-ups, the biggest news in the Gusha Mountain Range recently is that the Heavenly Spirit Sect's King Juju's Sword King plans to head to the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. There are countless opportunities in the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. I think Taoist Dark North will definitely go there. When the time comes, we only need to inform the higher-ups of our analysis, and they'll naturally know where to look for him. Remember, there are some dangers that must be avoided as much as possible. Taoist Dark North is definitely an extremely dangerous person. In my opinion, he's no less dangerous than the Dream Immortal King. Situ Zhengning said with a serious expression. No less dangerous than the Dream Immortal King? Sage Unhindered's heart trembled in disbelief. What kind of existence was the Dream Immortal King? She was a bona fide king expert. In the Gusha Mountain Range, the Dream Immortal King was probably the strongest apart from the nascent divinity cultivator of the Sky Mist sect. Yet, in his master's opinion, Taoist Dark North was as dangerous as the Dream Immortal King. Did he also have the battle prowess of a king? Soon he shook his head. How powerful was a king? Even if Taoist Dark North had broken through to the Golden Core realm, he would at most be at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. How could he be comparable to the Dream Immortal King? His master was too cautious and had lost some of his former sharpness. He was old after all. Chapter 617. Master, is this the cloud-piercing mountain range? This environment is much worse than our northern nether realm. It's even weaker than the Gusha mountain range that we just passed through. In a place like this, even a primordial spirit realm expert would find it difficult to be born, right? Did Senior Brother Wu-Wei and the others really fall in a place like this? In the void, a warship flew across the sky. On the warship stood two cultivators in long robes. One of them had a majestic figure. His face appeared simple and honest, but a trace of shrewdness flashed through his eyes. As for the other person, he had the appearance of an old man. His entire face appeared to be wrinkled together, and the space between his eyebrows was deeply furrowed. He had an appearance of great bitterness and hatred. These two people were Demon Lord Guahai and his master, Patriarch Bitter Sonnet. Because of Demon Lord Guahai's suffocating operation, the master and disciple duo had offended the true devil sect's big shot, Old Mother Blood Refining. They were directly sent to investigate the death of the three demon lords of the true devil sect. Whether it was Demon Lord Willow Wood, Demon Lord Wan's son, or Demon Lord Wu-Wei, they were all core experts of the true devil sect. They were not weak, especially Demon Lord Wu-Wei. His speed was unparalleled, and his attack and defense were not weak either. He had a chance of becoming a titled Emperor expert in the future. In the end, they all fell in the small cloud-piercing mountain range. The true devil sect naturally had to investigate carefully. The smaller the place, the more careful we have to be. There are many top experts who like to stay in barren places like this, playing the human world and enjoying life. I reckon that Wu-Wei and the others offended someone they couldn't afford to offend because the situation was too unreasonable. As Patriarch Bitter Sonnet spoke, he stretched out his hand and a mysterious light flashed. Then, as if he had sensed something, he identified a direction and drove the flying carpet over. A few hours later, the figures of the master and disciple appeared in an open space. This is the place where Wu-Wei, Willow Wood, and Wan's son fell. Patriarch Bitter Sonnet pointed at a large area in front of him. Because of the previous battle, the vitality here was still a little chaotic. The ground looked as if it had been paired, looking very desolate. This place. Suddenly, Patriarch Bitter Chalice's expression changed as he looked at a forest. This forest was in stark contrast to the surrounding desolation. Not only were the trees lush, but the flowers and trees were also brimming with spiritual light. They were all spiritual materials and spiritual items that had undergone more than one transformation in a short period of time. His heart stirred, and he couldn't help but stretch out his hand. Soon, two thick legs emerged from the forest. The incision on the thigh was smooth, and the blood that flowed out was bright red and eye-catching. It was full of essence, as if it had just been cut off from a person's leg. These are Senior Martial Brother Wu-Wei's feet. It was directly severed by someone using a great divine ability. From the intertwining of the aura, it seems to be the great magnetic slash created by the Emperor of Magnetism 1,000 years ago. Demon Monarch Guahai's heart jolted as he couldn't help but ask. That's right, it's the great magnetic slash. Furthermore, it was the great magnetic slash that had been cultivated to perfection. In the entire firmament territory, there were only a few people who could cultivate the great magnetic slash to perfection. All of them had been in the gold core realm for more than 1,000 years, or had even reached the primordial spirit realm. I hope we won't meet those primordial spirit realm experts this time. Otherwise, we won't be able to settle this matter with just the two of us. If we can't settle this matter, the Red Blood Matriarch won't let the two of us go. Patriarch Bitter led his side and looked at Devil King Guahai with a dark gaze. Demon Monarch Guahai's face revealed a trace of embarrassment. How could he have known that his junior martial brother had such a powerful background? The Annie he mentioned was actually a real Annie. Junior martial brother has misled me. I pity myself for being so naive to believe him. Patriarch Bitter Chalice snorted and waved his hand. A round mirror suddenly appeared in the void. Then, he reached out and pointed at the mirror. Immediately, A drop of blood from Demon Monarch Wu Wei's severed leg was pointed at the round mirror. Buzz! The round mirror trembled and suddenly shone with spiritual light. Like flickering lights and passing shadows, images immediately flashed past. Then, as he focused his eyes, an image appeared in the round mirror. In the image, Demon Monarch Wu Wei was sealed in a huge sword-shaped cage. Between the heavens and the earth, there was a black thread that streaked across the sky like a flash of lightning. In an instant, Demon Monarch Wu Wei's legs were severed. Then, Demon Monarch Wu Wei used all his means, including the blood of the true demon. He erupted with unparalleled battle strength, but he was still killed by the great magnetic slash. Seeing this, Patriarch Bitter Chalice heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly pointed at the round mirror again. The image in the round mirror suddenly changed direction and slid in the direction of the great magnetic slash. However, it disappeared without a trace in the void. One after another, great divine powers flashed past, but they couldn't see the specific appearance of the person who performed the divine powers. This, Demon Monarch Guahai couldn't help but change his expression. He said in shock, "Is the Ray Realm not working? Why can't I see the person who killed Senior Brother Wu Wei?" It's not that it's not working. It's that this person possesses a special domain divine ability that allows him to conceal himself. Under the influence of the domain divine ability, a Ray Realm divine ability cultivator like me can't see his true appearance. But that's not a big deal. Although this person is strong, judging from the way he killed Martial Nephew Wu Wei, he should possess the battle strength of a titled king. But a titled king isn't at the nascent spirit realm. He's not much of a threat to me. Now, all we need to do is confirm this person's identity, catch him, and capture him. Patriarch Bitter Chalice waved his hand again as he spoke. A mysterious ray of light flashed past with a slight stroke of his hand. Hiss! The light entered his body, but Patriarch Bitter Chalice's expression suddenly changed. What's going on? I can't detect him? To think that this person has a treasure that conceals the secrets of the heavens. Even my god-chasing lock technique is unable to detect his location. His brows couldn't help but furrow deeply. Coupled with the wrinkles on his face that were like intersecting chasms, he instantly appeared even more bitter and vengeful. What do we do then? Demon Monarch Guahai couldn't help but ask. Let's go to the nearest immortal city and ask around. This person possesses the battle strength of a titled king, so he can't be a nobody. As long as we figure out his identity, we'll be able to catch up to him. With a low shout, Patriarch Bitter Chalice summoned the warship again. Then, the two of them lightly leaped onto the warship. Hum, hum, hum. The warship soared into the sky and suddenly came to life. As the great formation rose, the warship's speed also rapidly increased. Soon, the warship's speed reached an astonishing level. Then, like a ray of light, it quickly disappeared over the horizon. Chapter 618. I've spent a lot this time, but I've also gained a lot. I hope that these 5 additional cultivation techniques will allow me to successfully create a golden core realm cultivation technique. Bai Ziyue pondered as he looked forward to it. Of course, he didn't hold out much hope. Even though he had accumulated a lot of divine realm cultivation techniques, he was even more aware of the profoundness of golden core realm cultivation techniques, especially since he wanted to create a technique that was suitable for him and not inferior to the Grand Tao of Unity and the heaven-devouring divine transformation art. The requirements were even higher. Therefore, after leaving the 9-star Tao Palace, he didn't immediately leave Heavenly Mist City. Instead, he took a turn and arrived at a huge restaurant, Heavenly Mist Pavilion. It was also the landmark of Heavenly Mist City. It was very eye-catching. Bai Ziyue intended to organize the few cultivation techniques he had obtained this time in detail here. At the same time, he could also use this opportunity to try creating a golden core cultivation technique for the first time. "Senior, are you staying or dining?" As soon as he stepped in, a female attendant at the mid-aperture enlightening realm respectfully greeted him. "Staying," Ziyue said indifferently, "Our heavenly mist pavilion is the best cultivation in the entire heavenly mist city. Ordinary inns have, at most, heaven, earth profound, and yellow cultivation courtyards for various cultivators to cultivate in. Our heavenly mist pavilion has a celestial rank above these four ranks. Among them, the celestial rank cultivation courtyards not only contain an abundance of heaven and earth spirit chi that is comparable to the core of a grade 5 spirit vein, but also have been set up by a grade 4 formation master. They've set up various formations that can help cultivators calm their chi and focus their mind, allowing them to smoothly comprehend various Tao techniques and divine abilities. It's extremely popular among the experts of the various celestial sects. Many experts choose to enter secluded cultivation in our celestial rank cultivation rooms to break through. For example, the Dream Immortal King broke through in one of our celestial rank cultivation rooms. She condensed a golden core of the 3 upper golden cores and stepped into the golden core realm. As for the heaven rank cultivation courtyards, although the spirit chi is a little weaker than the celestial rank cultivation courtyards, the effects of cultivating in them are actually better than the heaven rank cultivation courtyards of ordinary restaurants. Hearing this, the attendant's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly began to explain. Immortal grade, then. I'll stay for a month first. Ziyue waved his hand and said, It just so happens that our Sky Mist Pavilion has an empty immortal grade cultivation room. Coincidentally, the immortal grade cultivation courtyard was called the Dream Immortal Residence. It was the place where the Dream Immortal Emperor was cultivating in seclusion. It was the most popular cultivation holy land among the young experts of the various immortal sects. I'll check in right away. The female attendant's eyes lit up, and she hurriedly led Ziyue inside. After taking care of things, she respectfully handed him an entry medallion. On the other hand, Ziyue also paid a month's fee, which was a total of 300 upper spiritual stones. Senior, this way, please. I'll escort you to the Immortal Dream Residence. The female attendant bowed respectfully before gesturing for them to move forward. Right at this moment, a group of people walked over. Bai Ziyue's gaze flickered. Among this group of people, the person leading the way was dressed similarly to the female attendant beside him. He was a member of the Sky Mist Pavilion. However, the 3 people behind him were dressed very luxuriously. The person in the middle looked especially handsome. He was dressed in a brocade robe that shone brightly. His head ornaments, jade pendants, bracelets, prayer beads, and even the palm leaf fan in his hand were not only exquisitely made, but they were all extraordinary Dharma treasures. Although his immortal technique was only at the middle stage of the God realm, Ziyue could vaguely sense a faint sense of threat from him. It was obvious that other than the Dharma treasures that he had exposed, he also had other treasures with him. However, what really caught Ziyue's attention were the 2 people behind him. The 2 of them were also exquisitely dressed. Their eyes were sharp, and there was a faint sense of pressure that spread out like 2 giant beasts. It was frightening. Golden Core. The 2 of them were actually experts of the Golden Elixir realm, although they were only at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. However, a cultivator at the middle stage of the God realm, followed by 2 cultivators at the early stage of the Golden Core realm, was indeed shocking. It also proved that his identity and status were extraordinary. In the cloud-piercing mountain range, even the son of the master of the Qingshu sect did not receive such treatment. Although Ziyue was curious about their identities, he did not want to pay attention to them. Therefore, he said to the maid beside him, "Lead the way." Wait. As soon as Ziyue finished speaking, the luxuriously dressed cultivator shouted softly. Ziyue frowned, turned his head, and said, "What's the matter?" Is the token in his hand the certificate of admission to the Immortal Dream Residence, the Immortal Cultivation Secret Room? The young man in brocade looked at the female attendant beside it. The female attendant's face turned pale. She smiled apologetically and said, "Jinren Li, this is the Immortal Dream Residence where your sister, the Dream Immortal King, was when she broke through to the Golden Core realm. This senior wants to cultivate in seclusion in the Immortal Cultivation Courtyard. It just so happens that the Immortal Dream Residence is the only vacant courtyard in our Tianlan building that hasn't been rented out. So, I want the Immortal Dream Residence." Li Mengqian waved his hand and interrupted the female attendant. Then he stretched out his hand, and a suction force was generated from his hand. It directly took the token in Ziyue's hand. "Lead the way." Ziyue just glanced at him indifferently. The suction force seemed to have disappeared without a trace. It did not have any effect at all. At this time, through the female attendant's words, he guessed the identity of the young man in brocade. He was Li Mengqian, the younger brother of the Dream Immortal King, who he had heard many times before. However, he didn't care about this at all. Even if the Dream Immortal King was in front of him, he would not have the slightest fear, let alone the younger brother of the Dream Immortal King. Strength was the biggest confidence of a cultivator in the world. The female attendant was stunned and hesitated. She did not dare to act rashly. She knew Li Mengqian's identity and knew that he was very arrogant. If she did not do as he wished, even the shopkeeper of the Tianlan building would be punished, let alone a mere attendant like her. The Dream Immortal King was the only king-level expert in the Gusha mountain range. He was also the strongest existence besides the primordial soul ancestor of the Tianlan sect. His strength was enough to be ranked in the top 2 in the Gusha mountain range. No one dared to look down on him. Even the sect master of the Tianlan sect could not. As the younger brother of the Dream Immortal King, Li Mengqian's status was naturally very high. Most importantly, he was greatly taken care of by the Dream Immortal King. This could be seen from the 2 Golden Core Realm experts by his side. Chapter 619. Let's see who dares to leave. Li Mengqian roared. As soon as his voice fell, the auras of the 2 Golden Core Realm experts beside him were unleashed. 2 Golden Core realms were applied on Ziyue. "How dare you?" Ziyue roared in a realm strength that was much stronger than the 2 Golden Core Realm experts' realm strength was unleashed. Not only did the realm strength of the 2 Golden Core Realm experts retreat back into their bodies, but it also forced them to take a step back. Compared to the 2 Golden Core Realm experts, Li Mengqian was the one who was affected the most by Ziyue's realm strength. Li Mengqian was only at the Middle Divine Realm Immortal Technique realm. His immortal technique aptitude was far inferior to his sister's. Coupled with his poor temperament, he was only able to reach the Middle Divine Realm Immortal Technique realm because of the resources he had. Now that he was being suppressed by Ziyue's realm strength, his legs went soft. Slap! He knelt down in front of Ziyue and crawled on the ground. The scene fell into silence. "Don't provoke me. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect you." Ziyue looked at Li Mengqian indifferently and said to the female servant, "Lead the way." Yes, the female attendant looked at by Ziyue in awe. She didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly led him to the Immortal Dream Residence. Throughout the whole process, the 2 Golden Core Realm experts did not say a word. Even Li Mengqian did not say a word. He was scared out of his wits. When Ziyue's indifferent voice was heard, he immediately felt a chill in his heart, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Boundless fear rose in his heart. At this moment, he did not doubt that Lin Fan would really attack him and kill him, even though it was ridiculous, because he was in the Sky Mist Immortal City, under the restriction of the array. If Lin Fan dared to attack him, he would definitely be suppressed by the array and killed by the experts of the Sky Mist sect. In this place, even the Golden Core Realm experts of the Sky Mist sect did not dare to attack him. Not to mention, his identity was extraordinary. He was a younger brother of the Dream Immortal King, an emperor. Anyone who heard of him would be intimidated. He believed that although the other party's strength was extraordinary, he would not dare to offend his sister. However, he did not dare to gamble. Thus, he could only allow her to leave his side. "Young Master Li, what should we do next?" At this moment, the early-stage Golden Core Realm expert behind him couldn't help but ask in a low voice. In his heart, he could not help but feel a little nervous. After all, Ziyue's strength could be seen just from the strength of his domain. He was definitely much stronger than them. Unless it was absolutely necessary, They really didn't want to easily become enemies. However, based on their understanding of Li Mengqian, she would definitely not let the matter rest after being humiliated in front of so many people. She would definitely seek revenge. Sure enough, Li Mengqian's eyes were red, and her face was twisted with anger. He growled, "Find out who he is first. Also, let me ask you, based on your judgment, what is the approximate level of his strength? In terms of cultivation level, he's the same as us, only at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. However, in terms of the strength of his domain, he is much stronger than us. Either he has cultivated a domain grade ability, which is why his domain is so unusual, or the grade of his core is extraordinary. It's at least at the level of an upper grade Golden Core." One of the Golden Core realm cultivators hurriedly answered, "It should be a combination of both. Not only did this person cultivate a domain grade ability, but the grade of his core is definitely at the level of an upper grade Golden Core. That's the only reason why our domain power was crushed by him. In terms of combat strength, his strength should not be weaker than an ordinary mid-stage Golden Core realm expert, or even a late-stage Golden Core realm expert." Another Golden Core realm expert couldn't help but speak cautiously. Domain grade ability? An upper grade Golden Core? The combat strength of a late-stage Golden Core realm expert? Li Mengqian muttered as a trace of viciousness flashed across her eyes. She said resentfully, "No one can protect me, right? Very good, very good. It's been too long since someone dared to threaten me like this." As she spoke, she continued, "Uncle Master Jean, keep an eye on him nearby and see when he comes out of seclusion. Uncle Master Zhao, come with me to the Forbidden Spirit Mountain Village. I remember that the village master of the Forbidden Spirit Mountain Village admires my sister a lot. He has said many times that he is willing to go through fire and water for her. This time, let's ask him to help us and see his sincerity. This is related to the Dream Immortal King after all." The two of them were shocked. Everything had a price. Even if the village master of the Forbidden Spirit Mountain Village admired the Dream Immortal King a lot, he still had to show his sincerity. The Dream Immortal King would definitely not give herself to others because of this. However, this kind of karma was not something that could be compensated with some treasures. "What are you afraid of? I'm her brother." Li Mengqian snorted and said angrily, "I just wanted to die." The two of them changed their expressions as they knew that Li Mengqian was extremely angry. They didn't dare to persuade her anymore. Although this Dream Immortal residence was created because the Dream Immortal King broke through to the Golden Core realm here, the environment and layout are really good. Ziyue stepped into the Dream Immortal residence and looked around. Although there were traces of arrays in the surroundings, they were hidden in the scenery and looked very natural. Even if it was him, he would feel relaxed and happy as he walked among them. His thoughts seemed to have become more active. Soon, Bai Ziyue arrived at one of the secret cultivation rooms. Not only was the spiritual qi abundant, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was also very active. He could absorb it at will. Moreover, when he sat down with his legs crossed, he felt that his mind was calm, and he felt like he was floating in the air. It was very suitable for secluded cultivation. This immortal cultivation courtyard is worth the money. Ziyue immediately felt satisfied. Then, he rose up from the array. Under the seal of the entire formation, it was difficult for anyone to spy on his surroundings. "Let's start. I will carefully organize the 5 Golden Core realm cultivation techniques. I will completely turn these cultivation techniques into my foundation. Then I will prepare to create new cultivation techniques." Ziyue made up his mind. He looked away and quickly put his thoughts in his mind. First, he began to organize the cultivation techniques of the Golden Cauldron True technique. Although he had received information about cultivation from the Stone Tablet of Inheritance, in fact, he didn't completely understand it. Only by understanding the mysteries within would he be able to truly comprehend and use the true wonders within to create a new cultivation method that belonged to him. Accumulation had always been one step at a time. There was no shortcut. Activate Tao Enlightenment time. Bai Ziyue combed through it carefully and then quickly started the Enlightenment time. Under this special state, he thoroughly organized and understood. Chapter 620. The Enlightenment Time had begun. In the blink of an eye, by Zhu's thoughts became active like never before. Countless mysteries and cultivation experiences related to the Golden Cauldron True Technique flashed in his mind under his enlightenment. He understood them and turned them into his own cultivation foundation. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Half an hour later, Zhu completely understood the Golden Cauldron True Technique. He knew the mysteries of it like the back of his hand. If he wanted to cultivate the Golden Cauldron True Technique now, it would not be difficult at all. He would only need 1 or 2 days to get started. Moreover, he would not encounter any bottlenecks when he cultivated to the later stages. He would be able to reach the peak of the Golden Elixir realm directly. However, Zhu was naturally not satisfied with this. He quickly turned his attention to another cultivation technique. This time, it was the Great Dao Song technique. Compared to the Golden Cauldron True Technique, the Great Dao Song technique contained the Dao of sound. It was a cultivation technique that used sound to harmonize with the Dao of heaven and earth. It was a cultivation technique that strengthened the cultivator's soul. It was even more mysterious. Zhu spent more than 40 minutes to fully comprehend it. Then, he did not need to comprehend it. He used the enlightenment time to comprehend each and every one of the cultivation techniques. He completely understood them. Finally, he had a calm and steady aura about him. This was a kind of confidence. 5 Golden Elixir Realm cultivation techniques, in addition to the few that I have mastered previously, including the 5 Emperors Reincarnation technique that allows one to reach the middle primordial spirit realm, and the 9 transformations of the Serpent Dragon that allows one to transform from a snake into a dragon. My foundation has finally deepened. Now I can also make my first attempt at creating a new cultivation technique. Zhu carefully comprehended the various Golden Elixir Realm cultivation techniques. A look of joy appeared on his face. Therefore, Zhu quickly activated the enlightenment time again. Immediately after, Zhu felt his thoughts become extremely active again. All kinds of ideas that he had forgotten in the past flashed through his mind. All kinds of cultivation theories that were not systematic, and all kinds of understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth became clear and orderly in an instant. It was as if characters were sequenced in his mind, colliding and combining. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Under the effect of the enlightenment time, Zhu's speed of creation far surpassed that of ordinary cultivators. Cultivation theories were eliminated one by one, and even more mysteries were eliminated by him. But at the same time, there were also mysteries that he regarded as treasures. He sorted them out and reflected them in his heart as nourishment. He planned to smelt them into his own cultivation method. This was a long process. What he needed was the skill of ink painting. Under the countless collisions of thoughts, there were countless possibilities. Even if some of the theories were very brilliant, once they were not in line with his philosophy and conflicted with the cultivation method he was about to create, he would abandon them. It was like a furnace of the great Tao, brewing and smelting within. Only the final form would be what he wanted, the one that was most suitable for him. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, suddenly, Zhu's body shuddered, and he finally woke up from his trance. The time spent comprehending the Tao is indeed mysterious. It allows me to be 100 or 1,000 times more efficient than usual. In the time spent comprehending the Tao, it seems like only a moment has passed, but in fact a long time has passed. It seems like a long time, but it is only a moment. In 3 days, I have gained a lot, no less than 10 years of work. However, in the end, I still did not manage to create a cultivation method that I'm satisfied with. At best, it is only an embryonic form. Zhu's face could not help but reveal a trace of melancholy. In the end, his foundation was still a little lacking. His foundation was not enough, and there were too few cultivation methods at the Golden Core realm. Therefore, in the end, he was unable to create this cultivation method as he wished. It was only an embryonic form. However, using the time spent comprehending the Tao this time is not without gains. The embryonic form of the cultivation method not only allowed me to understand the direction of the cultivation method at the Golden Core realm, but also allowed me to take a big step forward on the path of creation. At least, I have already laid out the framework. Next, what is lacking is the foundation to fill in the mysteries of the cultivation method and the operation method. In this way, as long as there are a few more cultivation methods that can lead to the peak of the Golden Core realm for me to comprehend, I'm confident that I can create a cultivation method from the early stage to the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. Ziyue's heart was slightly relieved. There were naturally very few cultivation methods at the Golden Core realm, and they were also very precious. However, he believed that it would not be too difficult for him to obtain them. 3 days of comprehending the Tao consumed a lot of energy. There are more than 40 million energy points. However, I also have a lot of spiritual energy now. After consuming more than 40 million, I still have more than 280 million left. It should be enough to support me to create the cultivation method. Ziyue looked at the attribute panel. The amount of spiritual energy of more than 280 million gave him a lot of confidence. Then, he finally stopped creating the cultivation method completely. His mind moved. Whoosh! A light and agile flying sword rushed out of his body. Life treasure, North Dark Flying Sword. Previously, this North Dark Flying Sword had already been upgraded to the level of a supreme treasure by me. Its power is extraordinary. But now my immortal method realm has been upgraded from the peak of the God realm to the level of the Golden Core realm. Life treasure at the level of supreme treasure is naturally not enough. Ziyue looked at the life treasure hovering in the void and flicked his finger. Buzz! A crisp sound like a drop of water falling into a lake made people's hearts tremble. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand. Immediately, countless materials, broken magic treasures, and all kinds of iron, stone, and gold essence appeared around him. This time seclusion will allow me to continue improving the grade of this life-bound magic treasure. A treasure of the Golden Core realm. Only a treasure of the Golden Core realm is more suitable for me to exert my strength at this time. Ziyue gently pointed. Buzz! The North Dark Flying Sword trembled, and in a flash, it appeared in the sky. He was very clear about the magical use of magic treasures. In the world of immortal methods, there were too many cultivators who could do whatever they wanted with only 1 or 2 powerful magic treasures. There were even many experts of the Golden Core realm who could be crowned as kings because of the power of magic treasures. Although Ziyue's strength was mostly above those great magical powers, if the life treasure could be matched with the great magical powers, its power would inevitably be increased to a certain extent. Naturally, he could use this to exert a stronger power. For example, the one sword breaking all laws that he upgraded to the level of great magical powers was not weaker than the magnetic slash when he combined it with the flying sword. This was under the condition that his North Dark Flying Sword was only at the level of a supreme treasure. Once the North Dark Flying Sword was upgraded to the level of a treasure of the Golden Core realm, the power of one sword breaking all laws would inevitably surpass the magnetic slash and become his number 1 offensive means. This was the advantage of magic treasures. Chapter 6:21. Buzz! As soon as Ziyue thought about it, the North Sea Flying Sword in the air immediately began to vibrate. Then, under his control, it produced a huge suction force. Then, all the spiritual materials around, the essence of magic treasures, the essence of iron and stone, the creation, and the spiritual light were all attracted and poured into the flying sword, accompanied by the sound of the flying sword. With the influx of the essence of various materials, the power of the flying sword began to increase. Sure enough, with the increase of my strength, the level of my natal magic treasure finally began to improve. Unlike before, because my realm was only at the peak of the divine realm, the level of my natal magic treasure could only be upgraded to the level of the best magic treasure. Ziyue relaxed slightly and continued to urge the flying sword to devour the essence of various materials with all his strength. As the flying sword continued to devour, the spiritual light of the piles of materials on the ground dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The iron and stone also decayed, and even the broken and complete magical treasures had their essence sucked dry. As time went by, the piles of materials gradually collapsed and turned into ordinary things, dust. Seeing this, Ziwe's expression didn't change. With a wave of his hand, he transferred all these things with weak spiritual chi into the North Sea cave. Then with another wave of his hand, another pile of materials piled up around him. After one pile, another pile. Under the piling of countless materials, a sense of heaviness was vaguely produced on the flying sword. Buzz, 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 with a violent tremor of the flying sword. With a mind connection, Ziwe immediately felt that his flying sword was smoother, heavier, and more powerful. It has been upgraded. After constantly devouring the essence of various materials and magic treasures, the flying sword has finally been upgraded from the level of the best magic treasure to the level of the gold core. Ziwe's eyes immediately lit up. He clearly felt the power of the North Sea flying sword at this time. This kind of power was 10 times stronger than before, and there was a kind of transcendent Taoist connotation. It seemed that good fortune came from heart. Ziwe's heart suddenly moved, and then he reached out and quickly sketched in the void. Buzz, soon, the words of the great Tao began to take shape in the void. These characters of the great Tao naturally contain the great Tao of heaven and earth. They were characters created by an ancient almighty after comprehending the great Tao of heaven and earth. They cannot be contained on paper or jade slips. At this moment, as he drew, the void trembled and ripples spread out in all directions. If not for his Jindan essence maintaining it, it would have dissipated very quickly. These words of the great Tao quickly took shape under Ziwe's writing. Then he pointed at them. Chi, chi, chi. A total of 108 characters of the great Tao rushed into the dark north flying sword like a brand. Instantly, Ziwe's Dharma treasure, which was originally formed by the Tao accumulation of heaven and earth, gained a sense of liveliness and vitality. It was as if there was an additional layer of fortune on top of this magical treasure. Even if the magic treasure itself was standing still, there would be wisps of spiritual energy faintly pouring into the flying sword like birds flying into flames. It was as if it had the ability to breathe and was actually taking in and exhaling spirit chi on its own. Spiritual intelligence. This is the Dharma treasure giving birth to spiritual intelligence. Ziwe's face immediately revealed a look of excitement. A natal Dharma treasure was innately close to the cultivator. Naturally, it was intimately close to the cultivator and could be easily controlled by the cultivator. However, even a natal Dharma treasure rarely gave birth to spiritual intelligence. This was because spiritual intelligence was equivalent to a Dharma treasure already having breathing and life. It could grow on its own, take in and exhale spirit chi of heaven and earth, and devour the vitality of various spiritual objects. After a long period of time, it could even advance on its own and increase its grade. And for a Dharma treasure with this characteristic, even if its original owner died and there was no cultivator to support it, as long as the Dharma treasure itself was not damaged midway, its spirituality was not lost, and its vitality was not extinguished, it would definitely successfully break through the grade limit and step into the ranks of numinous treasures. In other words, even if Ziwe's natal Dharma treasure had only just given birth to spiritual intelligence and had a little bit of spiritual light, it already had the conditions to become a numinous treasure. The qualities of a numinous treasure. The Dark North flying sword already had the qualities of a numinous treasure. One had to know that above golden core treasures, there were essence soul treasures, and above essence soul treasures were numinous treasures. Even if this flying sword was thousands of miles away from becoming a numinous treasure, it still needed countless resources and countless years of accumulation. However, just this slight possibility made Ziwe's natal Dharma treasure become extraordinary. Its value was 10 times or 100 times that of an ordinary golden core treasure. In the eyes of many sects, it was even a kind of cornerstone treasure that could be passed down for eternity. The legacy of a sect was originally calculated in tens of thousands of years. Countless years of accumulation and resources would definitely allow it to advance to a numinous treasure. Time and resources were not a problem at all for a sect with a long heritage. I didn't expect that my move of good fortune would give my natal flying sword another layer of fortune. Ziyue was really pleasantly surprised. Silently turning his spirit consciousness, the flying sword suddenly trembled. Chi! It quickly disappeared on the spot. Even with Ziyue's naked eye, he could only vaguely see a silver flash and traces in the void, but it was difficult to capture the flying sword's trajectory. So fast, Ziyue was slightly surprised. He had seen others use golden core treasures to attack, and there was no lack of them using their natal flying swords. Some golden core treasures had even reached the level of middle-grade golden core treasures, or even superior-grade golden core treasures. But in terms of speed, they were far inferior to his Dark North flying sword. As for power, Ziyue's gaze fell on a row of test gems in the cultivation courtyard. This immortal-grade cultivation courtyard was originally a place for golden core experts to cultivate. Naturally, there were also things for cultivators to test their offensive power, and these test gems were one of them. The test gems were incomparably hard and had the ability to self-repair. They could be called a great treasure. The only pity was that they could not be used to refine weapons, but were most suitable for testing the offensive power of cultivators. There were a total of 12 test gems in a row, corresponding to the 12 levels of golden core experts. For example, passing through a test gem meant that the cultivator had the offensive power of the 3rd level of the early golden core stage. Passing through 2 in a row meant that the cultivator had the offensive power of the 2nd level of the golden core stage, and passing through 3 meant that the cultivator had the offensive power of the 3rd level of the golden core stage. When it came to the 4th, the cultivator had the offensive power of the 3rd level of the middle golden core stage, and so on. If one could penetrate all 12 test gems in one go, it meant that the cultivator had the offensive power of the Emperor level. In the entire cloud-piercing mountain range, only the Dream Immortal King was known to have done this. Chapter 622. Passing through the 12th testing stone means that the cultivator has the battle prowess of an emperor. As expected, the battle prowess of an emperor exceeds the first class of the peak of the golden elixir stage. If the cultivator fails to pass through the 12th testing stone, it means that the cultivator's battle prowess is at the first class of the peak of the golden elixir stage. Ziyue calculated and quickly came to a conclusion. As for the primordial spirit above the emperor level, as there were no special testing stones at the scene, it was not easy to calculate. Then, without hesitation, the pure purple elixir energy in his body surged in an instant. It turned into flowing water and flowed into his natal flying sword. Chi chi chi. The flying sword vibrated and a bright light shot out in all directions. Then, under Ziyue's control, it turned into a ray of light and shot out. Poof, poof, poof. Like a hot knife through butter, the flying sword pierced through the testing stones one by one. It was not until the 8th testing stone that the remaining power weakened and it returned without any success. This time, it is the pure power of the magic treasure. I only used the purple core essence to activate it and did not use any special ability. Even so, the power of this sword has reached the 2nd class of the advanced stage of the golden elixir stage. If I use it with a special ability, how powerful will it be? Ziyue's eyes lit up, and he looked forward to it. Then, he looked at the testing stones. These testing stones had the ability to recover automatically. After the 8 testing stones were pierced, they quickly recovered under the influence of the array. After a few dozen breaths, they were whole again. Then, Ziyue began to experiment again. This time, Ziyue's North Sea flying sword shook slightly and evolved into a dazzling ray of light. In a flash, it pierced through the void. Poof, poof, poof. It was as if the flying swords were unstoppable. The flying swords streaked through the air, piercing through the touchstones one after another. After penetrating through a total of 10 touchstone stones, he was sent flying backwards as if his strength had run out. One sword to break all spells is just a flying sword technique at the Abhijna level. Although it is not weak, it is not as powerful as a great Abhijna. This time, I only managed to pierce through 10 of them, reaching the third level of the peak of the Golden Elixir realm. Ziyue frowned slightly. He waited until the touchstone recovered before attacking again. This time, he directly used the Grand Protomagnetic Slash. Silently, a black thread streaked across the sky. It was like a knife cutting like a rain of arrows, ignoring all obstacles and not fearing anything. Chi. Almost in an instant, a total of 11 testing stones were completely pierced through. Then, when it was halfway through the 12th testing stone, its power was exhausted and it disappeared into thin air. I've passed through 11 touchstones, but only halfway through the 12th touchstone. That is to say, with my current immortal technique realm, the might of the primordial magnet cutting technique has reached the first level of the peak of the Golden Core realm, but it has yet to truly step into the level of Emperor. Ziyue calculated silently. Regarding this, he felt that it was normal. Even if his golden elixir was extraordinary and was a perfect amethyst golden elixir, his cultivation of the Grand Protomagnetic Slash had reached the level of perfection. However, his immortal technique realm was still at the early stage of the golden elixir realm. The difference in realm naturally caused his offensive power to be weakened to a certain extent. However, if I use the godly Dharma body, Ziyue began to try again. With a thought, the aura on his body suddenly increased by a large margin, and a violent and terrifying aura emerged from his body. Then, he used the Grand Protomagnetic Slash again. Chi. The black thread, like a flash of light, quickly streaked across and directly pierced through the 12 touchstones. Then, without any decrease in power, it landed heavily on a wall behind the touchstones. With a boom, the formation recovered. Spiritual chi swayed, and it was finally able to withstand the remaining power of the attack. As expected, with the support of the godly Dharma body, my offensive power has completely surpassed the first level of the peak of the Golden Elixir realm and reached the Emperor realm. However, if I use the Tao technique, the Heaven Patching technique, the aura on Ziyue's body changed again. Under the effect of the Heaven Patching technique, his entire body was immediately filled with a kind of perfection and transcendence. It was as if a god had descended, and every move of his was filled with endless mystery. It was more like he was attuned to heaven and earth, and all the imperfections were repaired. This included the various divine abilities and great divine abilities that he had mastered. At this moment, under the effect of the Heaven Patching technique, his godly Dharma body was immediately replenished and upgraded into a peerless great divine ability that contained 1296 acupoints. Then, he used the Heaven Patching technique to evolve the Grand Protomagnetic Slash. The black thread was extremely fine and extremely fast. There was only a chi sound. The 12 touchstones were cut open in an instant. Then, without any decrease in power, the black thread landed on the formation in the distance. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, the power of the formation trembled violently. The surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth was drawn by the formation in an instant, and it evolved into an extremely powerful defensive force that blocked the remaining power of the Grand Protomagnetic Slash. Chi. The power of the formation rapidly weakened and dimmed. 90%, 70%, 50%. The power of the formation was reduced by 70% before it finally blocked Ziyue's attack. Then, the formation began to operate rapidly, continuously drawing spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and slowly began to recover. This attack, slowly dispersed the Heaven Patching technique and the godly Dharma body. His eyes moved slightly, and he whispered, "Previously, I didn't have a specific understanding of my offensive power. However, from this touchstone, I finally have a certain estimate of my own strength. If the combination of the grand proto-magnetic slash and the godly Dharma body can make my offensive power reach the level of an emperor, then, with the addition of the heaven patching technique, it's enough to make my offensive power reach the level of an essence spirit realm expert's all-out attack. Ziyue didn't know how strong the offensive power of an essence spirit realm expert was. However, he was confident that the power of his attack wouldn't be much weaker than that of a true essence spirit realm expert, even if it wasn't. At the very least, it could threaten an expert of that level. Moreover, it would definitely surpass that of an emperor. What happened just now? At this moment, in the heavenly mist immortal city, in the City Lord's mansion, the 9-star Dao Palace, and a huge mansion, a golden core realm expert rose up from each of them with a look of surprise on their faces. Chapter 6:23. These three people were the three golden core experts in Sky Mist Immortal City. They were the City Lord of Sky Mist Immortal City, Jing Guyu, the Palace Lord of 9-star Dao Palace, Situ Zhongning, and the last one was the golden core expert sent by Sky Mist Sect, Yuan. The three of them each controlled a part of the Heavenly Mist Immortal City's grand defensive formation. They could clearly sense all the unusual places in the Heavenly Mist Immortal City. Because of that, even though Bai Ziyue's attack was blocked by the formation and did not leak out at all, the three of them sensed it immediately. That direction seems to be Sky Mist House's immortal grade cultivation courtyard, Dream Immortal Residence. Is someone attacking the formation from inside? This strike directly weakened the Heavenly Mist House's 3 origins, 6 directions, great formation by 70%. I remember that this 3 origins, 6 directions formation is a rank 5 formation that can block the full power attack of a primordial spirit expert. This means that the power of this attack is only 70% of a primordial spirit expert's full power attack. Titled King? Could there be a titled king living in that courtyard? The three of them communicated through voice transmission, and their expressions changed drastically. How powerful was a Golden Core King? In the entire Gusha mountain range, there was only one Dream Immortal King. Could it be Dream Immortal King, Li Mengxian? Or is it the Heavenly Spirit Sect's Heavenly Sovereign Peak's eldest senior brother, the 9 Absolute Sword King, Zhang Dongsheng, who recently caused a huge commotion in Gusha Mountain Range? At this moment, Sky Mist Immortal City Lord, Jing Guyu, asked. Not really. Dream Immortal King should still be cultivating in seclusion in Immortal Cloud Sect, and there are no signs of her coming out. As for 9 Extinction Sword King, Zhang Dongsheng, according to what I know, he only appeared in Star Yuan Immortal City 3 days ago to receive experts from all over. Currently, the number of Golden Core Realm experts gathered by his side had already reached the number of fingers on one hand. If he came to Sky Mist Immortal City, he would definitely cause a huge commotion. It would not be as quiet as it is now. Sky Mist Sect's expert, Yuan, shook his head and explained. Then who could it be? Jingyu could not help but show a serious expression. Most importantly, they did not know whether this mysterious titled king was a friend or foe. Titled king? Could it be him? The palace master of the 9-star Dao Palace, Situ Zhongning, exclaimed in surprise. Damn, who is he? Upon hearing this, Jingyu and Yu Wen's hearts shook. They hurriedly asked, You should have heard that the person in charge of our 9-star Dao Palace in the cloud-piercing mountain range, true Lord Qian Yuan, has perished. And the person who attacked is a cultivator at the peak of the divine realm. A complicated look flashed across Situ Zhongning's face as he transmitted his voice. A cultivator at the peak of the divine realm? Adept Dark North? The two of them exclaimed in shock. Yes, it's him. Several days ago, he appeared at our 9-star Dao Palace and purchased a large number of resources. Not only were there 100 drops of primordial spirit true fluid, there were also several golden core realm cultivation techniques. Since this happened at the same time, I guess that the person living in the immortal dream residence must be this Taoist Dark North. Right, The current him should not be at the peak of the divine realm. He has already broken through and condensed his golden core. Situ Zhongning's face was solemn, but he could not help but rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, he had stayed true to his heart and had not been tempted by his disciples' words to attack this Taoist dark north. Otherwise, he would not have been able to block this attack that was comparable to a regal lord's. Even with Yu1 and Jinguyu's help, it would not have been enough. 100 drops of primordial spirit, true, fluid. Primordial spirit, true, fluid greatly increases a cultivator's strength. If he used the primordial spirit, true fluid to increase the power of his attack, then his actual attack power should be weaker. Hearing this, Yuan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was very clear about the terror of a regal lord. It was a kind of invincible battle power. But if he used external forces to increase his attack power to the level of a regal lord, then it was not as terrifying as imagined. This was because a regal lord's strength was in all aspects. It was not only in attack power, but also in defense, speed, casting speed, control of battle, and so on. It was a difference in the level of cultivation. If he used external forces, even if his attack power reached the level of a regal lord, his actual battle power was definitely far from that of a real regal lord. Although that's the case, it still proves that he's very powerful. Jing Guyu exclaimed in the end. In a courtyard, a few people were sitting opposite each other. One of them was handsome and wore luxurious clothes. He was Dream Immortal King's younger brother, Li Mengchen. Among the other three, two of them were early-stage Golden Core cultivators. They were Uncle Master Jin and Uncle Master Zhao, who were sent by Dream Immortal King to protect him. The last one was a middle-aged man. He was a little skinny, but his eyes were very long and narrow. He was only casually sitting there. His every movement was no different from the other three. However, there seemed to be a unique aura on his body that separated him from his surroundings, causing others to feel intimidated just by looking at him. This person was the Villa Master of Jinling Mountain Village, perfected Lord Jinling, whom Li Mengchen had specially invited to deal with Ziyue. His immortal technique realm was much higher than Uncle Master Jin and Uncle Master Zhao. He had reached the late-stage Golden Core realm. Uncle Master Jin, has that person come out of seclusion? Li Mengchen's eyes were gloomy as he asked in a low voice. Every time he recalled the humiliation of being forced to kneel on the ground, he felt so frustrated that he was going crazy. Thus, even now, his eyes were still crimson red. Not yet. But don't worry, I've sent 3 disciples to watch over him. Once he walks out of the cultivation courtyard, he won't be able to escape their eyes. Upon hearing this, Martial Uncle Jin hurriedly replied with a calm expression. That's good. Li Mengchen nodded, then looked at perfected Lord Jinling and said in a hoarse voice, I'll have to trouble you this time. Don't worry, he won't be able to escape. Perfected Lord Jinling smiled faintly and continued, I'll have to ask Brother Li to help me with the Dream Immortal King. When have I, Li Mengchen, ever gone back on my words? It'll be my sister's 100th birthday in 3 months. At that time, I'll give you a chance to be alone with her. As for the final result, it'll be up to you. Li Mengchen said disapprovingly. Of course. A hint of evil flashed across perfected Lord Jinling's long and narrow eyes. Then it was covered by his laughter. On the other side, Uncle Master Jin and Uncle Master Zhao looked at each other. A hint of worry flashed across each other's faces. Perfected Lord Jinling's reputation was not bad, but it was very bad. He had many wives and concubines. Li Mengchen's move was really pushing the Dream Immortal King into a fire pit. At this moment, a message Dharma treasure lit up. Uncle Master Jin picked it up and his voice was heard. He's out of seclusion. Chapter 624. Due to the lack of a cultivation technique, the immortal technique realm cannot be improved. This time, I failed to create a cultivation technique because my foundation was insufficient. Next time, when I collect more Golden Core level cultivation techniques, I will naturally be able to create another cultivation technique and truly create a Golden Core level cultivation technique. At the very least, I can enter Star Source Divine Mountain and use the Book of Great Tao to deduce it. If I use both methods at the same time, my cultivation technique will definitely succeed. However, after this refinement, this natal Dharma treasure actually has spirituality and possesses the qualities of a spirit treasure. Moreover, its power is far greater than ordinary low-grade golden core realm treasures. This is a pleasant surprise. Ziyue walked out of dream immortal residence with a deep gaze as he pondered silently. However, although a natal Dharma treasure with spirituality is strong, the increase in my strength is not as great as I imagined. In the end, other than the fact that I have raised several great divine abilities to the great perfection stage, and their power is beyond imagination, it is also because I lack a matching great offensive divine ability. Through the experiment with the trial gemstone, he could clearly feel the difference in power between his various offensive techniques. Among them, the strongest was the great primordial magnetic slash. This was actually a waste of one's life source magic treasure, because if he added a matching great divine ability of the sword immortal type with the power of the great divine ability itself and the power of the Dharma treasure, his offensive techniques would definitely have a qualitative change that would surpass the great primordial magnetic slash. One sword to break all techniques is ultimately just a divine ability. Its power is inferior to great divine abilities. As for the 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword, although it also requires the use of flying swords, it is a sealing-type great divine ability. Its offensive power is not strong. Therefore, I need a pure, great divine ability of the sword immortal type. Baizue muttered seriously as he looked towards the direction of Star Yuan Immortal City with a dark gaze. Originally, he had planned to go to Star Source Divine Mountain alone to see if there was a chance to enter the 4th level of Star Source Divine Mountain and use the Book of Great Tao to create a cultivation technique. However, when he thought of great divine abilities of the sword immortal type, he could not help but think of the Heavenly Spirit Sect's Master Heaven-Wielding Peaks 9 Extremes Sword King, Zhang Dongshen. This time, the other party had offered a Tao technique that was even stronger than great divine abilities, the 9 Extremes Divine Sword. As for the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, it just so happened to be a sword immortal type offensive technique. It seems that I have to go to Star Yuan Immortal City first. Baizue muttered. He could not help but frown slightly. His spiritual sense swept across the surroundings without changing his expression. However, before that, I'll have to take care of some minor problems first. After that, he turned around and headed out of Heavenly Mist City. The sky had just brightened, and the distant morning sun shone down on the immortal city, reflecting a kind of misty halo. Sky Mist Immortal City was filled with people. All kinds of cultivators were flying in all directions. Some enlightened cultivators were flying on their swords, while some deity realm experts were walking in the void. There were also many cultivators driving strange beasts, flying shuttles, warships, and merchant ships to and fro. It was a lively scene. Ziyue didn't reveal his aura. Like an ordinary enlightened aperture cultivator, he stepped on the void and slowly flew out. He was dressed in white, and his gaze was calm as he watched with interest. He could feel the difference between Heavenly Mist City and Piercing Cloud City. Gradually, the crowd became sparse. Baizeu's figure also appeared 30 miles away from the Sky Mist Immortal City. From afar, he could still see Heavenly Mist City. It was like a giant beast entrenched in the distance. At this moment, a handsome cultivator with obvious hatred in his eyes suddenly appeared on the city wall. So soon, you can't hold back anymore. Ziyue let out a low sigh. The other party's actions were too unscrupulous. This place was less than 30 miles away from Heavenly Mist City. From this, one could see how crazy and arrogant the other party was when he had nothing to fear. That's good. The earlier I settle this, the less time I have to waste, Ziyue said in a low voice. The surrounding void shook violently. A huge formation that seemed to cover the sky instantly rose up. Great Universal Spirit Restriction Formation. As soon as the formation was activated, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within a radius of 10 miles was quickly sucked dry. The power of the formation fell on Ziyue's body. There seemed to be a special sealing force that caused the core essence in his body to stagnate slightly. Even the circulation of his core essence was somewhat impeded. As a result, his strength was also suppressed. Then, numerous flying swords instantly formed a huge net in the surrounding void and shot towards Ziyue rapidly. Numerous Dharma treasures emitted terrifying auras as they fell from all directions. Numerous spiritual talismans fell, transforming into numerous ice cannons, seas of fire, mountain rocks, and lightning that danced in the sky, trying to drown him. There were also divine skills and offensive techniques that bombarded him fiercely. In an instant, countless attacks fell on Ziyue at the same time, attacking him from all directions. There was not a single spot that was left untouched. Under the effect of the Great Universal Spirit Restriction Formation and 63 Divine Realm experts, they attacked together. The power of this attack is not weaker than the full-force attack of a late Golden Core Realm expert. Their attacks were ruthless. The formation was also well-planned. If it was an ordinary early Golden Core Realm cultivator, it would be almost impossible for him to escape death. Unfortunately, I'm not an ordinary Golden Core Realm cultivator. As Ziyue spoke, he faced the countless attacks around him as if he did not care about them at all. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, the moment the countless attacks were about to hit him, the robe on his body suddenly moved and emitted a 5-colored halo. Great divine skill, 5 divine Emperor robe. Boom, boom, boom. Heaven and earth shook as countless attacks fell. The surrounding heaven and earth seemed to be flashing with dazzling light. The void was distorted, and there was a terrifying energy that was violently spreading in all directions. The shocking waves of spiritual chi made any cultivator below the Golden Core Realm feel shocked. If they would get close to it, they would definitely die. He didn't dodge it? Is he dead? So fast. On the city wall in the distance, Li Mengxian was stunned and a little surprised. It was a little different from what he had imagined. However, such an outcome undoubtedly made him more satisfied. It's better that he's dead. This is the consequence of offending me, Li Mengxian. The humiliation that he suffered last time can only be. He growled in a low voice, and his face suddenly changed. The spiritual chi scattered in all directions, but Ziyue, who was in the center, did not seem to be affected at all. Not only was his body unharmed, but even the Dharma robe on his body did not seem to be damaged much. It quickly returned to its original snow-white state. Is that a great divine skill to protect his body? How can it be so strong? Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Chapter 625. Even if it's a turtle shell today, I'm going to shatter it. Seeing this, perfected Lord Spirit Restriction's expression also changed, but soon, a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes again. As his aura rose, a terrifying aura instantly spread out. Then, he raised his hand to the sky. Suddenly, a pale red, extremely dazzling long saber appeared. As soon as the long saber appeared, the surrounding air trembled violently. Then, he waved his hand and evolved a great saber skill, slashing down fiercely. Kill! Die! At the same time, Uncle Master Zhong and Uncle Master Zhao, who were beside Li Mengxian previously, attacked at the same time. The two of them were from the same sect. Not only did they cultivate the same cultivation method, but they also learned the same great offensive skills. Even their natal Dharma treasure was the same, which was a sharp spike that looked like a wolf's fawn. The two spikes flew out at the same time the moment they attacked. Together with the cultivation method of the same origin and the great ability of the same sect, they immediately began to evolve and complement each other. The two spikes trembled and actually showed signs of fusing at this moment. The power of the spikes increased exponentially and stabbed towards Ziyue fiercely. You're courting death. Ziyue raised his eyes slightly, and a trace of coldness flashed in them. Without hesitation, he waved his hand. The void froze slightly. Without a sound, a black thread suddenly appeared. Then, the black thread appeared without any pause and quickly slashed out. All of this happened extremely quickly. In a flash, it directly slashed the faint red long saber of perfected Lord Spirit Restriction. With a swoosh, the long saber was completely cut in half by this slash. Then, without any reduction in power, the great magnetic slash quickly landed on the great heavenly cycle spirit restriction formation in the void. Swoosh! The great heavenly cycle spirit restriction formation quickly shattered and was directly cut in half by all of this. Rumble! The void trembled, and the formation shattered. Countless formation bases fell to the ground, and the cultivators supporting the formation coughed up mouthfuls of blood as their auras withered. At this time, the remaining power of Zue's magnetic slash hadn't completely dissipated. It crossed the void and quickly cut the bodies of several divine realm cultivators who couldn't dodge in time. Immediately, they felt a chill on their bodies. Then, they realized that their bodies had been sliced in two. No, their hearts were filled with panic as they let out terrified screams. However, they soon felt a special aura that contained endless destructive power surging within their bodies. In just an instant, their life force was completely extinguished. What? The formation is broken? Just one strike? Just like that? Furthermore, the remaining force of the attack managed to kill 8 cultivators. The surrounding cultivators, who were already shocked by the fact that Zue was unscathed after blocking their full force attacks, had a drastic change in their expressions as they revealed incomparably shocked expressions. The Great Heavenly Cycle Spirit Restriction Formation was an advanced Grade 4 formation. With the help of so many cultivators, even a late-stage Golden Core Realm expert would have a hard time breaking it. However, Zue was able to break it with ease. However, everything was broken just like that? What? Perfected Cultivator Spirit Restriction Formation's expression changed greatly. His face turned pale in an instant. His natal Dharma treasure was destroyed. Since his mind was connected to it, he was greatly shocked. However, compared to that, he was more shocked by the power of Zue's attack. With just one strike, Qin Nan had destroyed his natal Dharma treasure and destroyed the great heavenly cycle spirit restriction formation that they had painstakingly set up. On top of that, the remaining force of the attack didn't decrease at all as it killed 8 divine realm cultivators. This kind of power, this kind of terror, caused him to be horrified. He didn't expect the cultivator who seemed to be in the early stage of the Golden Core realm to be able to unleash such terrifying strength. The peak of the Golden Core realm. His combat strength had definitely reached the peak of the Golden Core realm. Run. Hurry up and run. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate at all. His figure flashed, and he instantly unleashed his maximum speed to escape into the distance. His strength was extraordinary, and he was now in the late-stage Golden Core realm. In the entire Gusha mountain range, he could be considered a powerhouse. However, Zue's attack had shattered his pride and courage. He was scared. He was extremely terrified. Uncle Master Zhong and Uncle Master Zhao, who had attacked with him, had the same thought. The shock in their hearts was far greater than perfected cultivator spirit restriction formations. They had previously come into contact with Zue and vaguely sensed his strength. However, at most, they guessed that he was only in the late-stage Golden Core realm. He definitely wasn't at the peak of the Golden Core realm. However, from this attack, they clearly sensed his tyrannical strength. This tyrannical strength made them vaguely feel like they were facing the dream immortal king. King? Even if he wasn't at the level of a king, he was definitely at the peak of the Golden Core realm. Moreover, he was considered powerful among the peak of the Golden Core realm. They looked at each other and felt bitter. They didn't care about the effect of their all-out attack and quickly fled. Luckily, we're not too far away from Sky Mist Immortal City. As long as we hide in the Immortal City, we'll be safe. Their figures were like lightning as they looked at Sky Mist Immortal City, which was close at hand, and rejoiced in their hearts. The Immortal City was reinforced by a formation protected by the city lord, overseen by the sky mist sex experts, and even the 9-star Dao Palace's palace master. No matter how strong Ziyue was, as long as he wasn't a king, he definitely wouldn't dare to act rashly. Don't you think it's too late to escape now? Ziyue snorted. As he easily dodged the combined attack of the 2 Golden Core Realm experts, he released his domain. Rumble. The void froze, and the entire world within a radius of 10 miles seemed to be under heavy pressure. Not only did the dozens of Divine Realm cultivators who attacked Ziyue not move, but even the 3 Golden Core Realm experts, Uncle Master Zhong, Uncle Master Zhao, and True Lord Spirit Restriction, slowed down. This was especially true for Uncle Master Zhong and Uncle Master Zhao, who were only at the early Golden Core Realm. Faced with Ziyue's Shadow Domain, which had reached the peak, they were the most affected and their speed was reduced by 50%. Die. Then, with a thought, the Northern Dark Flying Sword suddenly flashed and turned into a stream of light, rushing straight out. Puff! Uncle Master Zhong's body shook and his eyes widened. His pupils were filled with disbelief and shock. Then, he fell from the void and stopped breathing. Dead. Oh no. Uncle Master Zhao, who was next to Uncle Master Zhong, felt a chill in his heart. He waved his hand and quickly activated a life-saving talisman. Chapter 6:26. However, just as the light from the talisman bloomed, the flying sword that had just pierced through Martial Uncle Zhong's body flashed again and arrived before him. It easily pierced through the light from the talisman and pierced through his head. Then it pointed at the golden core inside his body and exterminated the soul inside. In the blink of an eye, 2 golden core experts had fallen. This battle was too sudden. Many people did not even realize what had happened. Then, they saw the formation outside the city rise, and an earth-shattering battle broke out. Subsequently, when they ascended high above and looked into the distance, they quickly saw Ziyue launch a counterattack. In an instant, he slashed a Golden Core Realm expert's natal magic treasure into 2 and shattered the grand formation that sealed the heavens and the earth. Moreover, he even seized the opportunity to launch a flying sword that soared through the sky and successively killed 2 initial-stage Golden Core Realm experts. Everything happened too quickly. At this moment, many people finally realized what had happened. Then, they were extremely shocked. Those 2 Golden Core experts seemed to be the 2 elders of the destroyed Cauldron Mountain sect. After they were captured by the Dream Immortal King, they were specially set up to protect their brother, Li Mengchen. Both of them were at the early Golden Core stage in the Immortal Dao realm. But they died just like that. They were easily killed by a flying sword. Someone could not help but widen his eyes and ask in surprise. Look at the other one. He has a strong background. If I'm not wrong, he should be the Villa Master of the Forbidden Spirit Mountain Village, perfected Lord Forbidden Spirit. He was at the later stage of the Golden Elixir realm. When he first condensed his Golden Elixir, even though he was only at the 7th grade among the 3 lower grades, with his Spirit Restriction technique, even a strong practitioner at the peak of the Golden Elixir realm would not dare to easily make him an enemy. In the end, he could only flee in panic. Another cultivator could not help but exclaim in surprise. Then, here's the question. Who is he? Then, they looked at each other, and at the same time, their eyes fell on the young man in the distance who was wearing a white robe. My natal Dharma treasure has become a Golden Core treasure, and its power has indeed increased greatly. Otherwise, with just the Dark North flying sword from before, even if I could kill these 2 Golden Core cultivators, it absolutely wouldn't have been so easy. Ziyue thought to himself, but his face remained calm. When he was still at the peak of the Divine Realm, he could already crush such a powerful cultivator. Being able to kill him with the Northern Darkness flying sword only made him feel a little more relaxed. He did not feel too proud. However, what I didn't expect was that Li Mengchen would hate me so much after a small conflict back then. She directly invited so many experts to besiege me. If I don't kill him this time, won't there be endless trouble coming to find me? Soon after, his heart turned cold, and he looked at the fleeing True Lord Spirit Restriction. Just like the two golden core cultivators he had killed earlier, perfected Lord Spirit Restriction also rushed towards the city wall. The successive deaths of perfected cultivator Zhong and perfected cultivator Zhao also gave him a fright. In his panic, even though he was only 10 miles away from the city wall, he did not hesitate to activate the soul ignition technique, and his speed soared again. At the same time, as he was gathering his strength, he shot out a beam of spiritual light toward Bai Ziyue without hesitation. This great divine ability, Ziyue's heart skipped a beat, and a trace of curiosity flashed in his eyes. He sensed a familiar aura from this spiritual light. However, his figure only flashed, and he dodged the impact of the spiritual light. Then, the flying sword pierced through the air again. This time, the flying sword soared into the sky and turned into a dazzling sword light. This sword light was incomparably bright, as if it was the only one in the world. When it soared into the sky, it was like the sun shining down on everything. What is this? Countless people were puzzled, and then they saw the sword light fall rapidly. Boom, boom, boom. It plunged down from the sky and formed a huge sword-shaped cage that was completely condensed from sword light. This sword-shaped cage was just right, and it directly enveloped the fleeing perfected Lord Spirit Restriction. At this moment, he was only one step away from stepping into the city wall. What? Perfected Lord Spirit Restriction's expression changed, and his aura surged as he hurriedly struck out with his palm. The power of this palm was extremely terrifying, and it fiercely slammed into the sword-shaped cage. Bang! With a loud bang, the palm print landed on the sword wall, but it only made the sword wall tremble slightly, and the sword wall was not damaged at all. This sword-shaped cage was Ziyue's great divine ability, the 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword. Even if he did not use the heaven patching technique or the amplification of his divine spirit dharma body, the power of this great divine ability was quite extraordinary. Not to mention Ziyue's purple extreme elixir essence and the enhancement of the North Sea flying sword, which had been upgraded to the level of an inferior grade golden core dharma treasure, directly increased the sealing power of this great divine ability by more than a few notches. Not to mention him, even a peak golden core realm expert would not be able to break through it so easily. How is this possible? Perfected Lord Spirit Restriction's eyes widened, and his already pale face could not help but distort, making him look particularly ferocious. He hurriedly waved his hand and attacked crazily again, and many divine abilities and great divine abilities were cast. It's futile. Ziyue snorted and waved his hand, and silently, a black silk thread formed with his hand. Then, he took advantage of the situation. The black silk thread flashed slightly and quickly disappeared. Great divine ability, great magnetic slash. Oh no! Jingyu, Situ Zhongning, Yuan, save me. Perfected Lord Spirit Restriction was terrified, and he knew very well how powerful Ziyue's great divine ability was. As he shouted, his body flickered continuously, and another ray of light rushed out and blocked in front of him. Chi. However, all his struggles were futile, just as Ziyue said. The great magnetic slash turned into a ray of light and quickly rushed into the sword-shaped cage and slashed on the Spirit Restriction light. The Spirit Restriction light was broken with just a little bit of energy, and the remaining force did not diminish, and quickly fell on the defensive treasure on his body. The defensive treasure shook violently, and in an instant was cut in half, and then fell on perfected Lord Spirit Restriction's body like a hot knife through butter. Everything was cut in half. His defensive robes and physical defenses were as tender as tofu in front of the grand essence-fused magnetic slash. They were sliced in two by the force. The power of the perfected great magnetic slash had already reached an unimaginable level. Even without using any enhancement methods, it was comparable to the full force attack of a peak Golden Core realm expert. Perfected Lord Spirit Restriction was only in the late-stage Golden Core realm. So how could he block such a sharp and ruthless attack? He didn't even have time to escape from his Jindan before it was destroyed by the destructive power of the magnetism. His soul within his Jindan was annihilated. Chapter 6:27. That attack. Within the immortal city, Jingyu, Situ Zhengning, and Yu1, who each controlled a part of the immortal city's array, were shocked. As expected, his strength is indeed at the peak of the Golden Core realm, and he's an expert at the peak of the Golden Core realm, especially with the strength of his attack. He's only one step away from the attack power of a king-ranked expert. With the help of the primordial spirit True Fluid, his attack power is truly at the level of a king-ranked expert. In other words, the attack in the Immortal Dream abode a few days ago was really launched by him. Perfected Lord Dark North? He's only at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. He's really a great talent. I reckon that when he breaks through to the Golden Core realm, he'll at least condense a first-grade Golden Core. He'll definitely become a king-ranked expert in the future. The three of them looked at True Lord Restriction Spirit, who had fallen in front of them, with a grave expression on their faces. Dead? They're all dead? Uncle Master Zhong, Uncle Master Zhao, and the Spirit Restriction Manor Lord are all dead? On the city wall, Li Mengchen, who was watching the battle from afar, was stunned. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. The ambush that he had painstakingly prepared was nothing more than a joke at this point in time. What kind of person did he provoke this time? Li Mengchen's heart was once again filled with fear. Then, when his eyes met the other party's eyes, he couldn't help but shiver. He wants to kill me? He dares to kill me? His expression changed, and he felt that it was ridiculous. Who would dare to attack him in the cloud-piercing mountain range? Die! Ziyue's body flashed with lightning and rushed over in the blink of an eye. Then he stretched out his hand, and a giant palm shot out. Rumble! The void was vast and mighty. The huge palm print slammed down fiercely, as if it could crush everything. Even the air exploded with a sound. This palm was the great immortal martial handprint. No! Save me! Li Mengchen immediately let out a scream of fear, and at this moment, the entire space trembled violently. The shocking grand formation that enveloped the entire sky mist immortal city was awakened, forcibly blocking Ziyue's palm strike. Fellow Taoist Dark North, please wait. Everyone knows that Mr. Li is the Dream Immortal King's younger brother and her only relative. She values him a lot. Even if fellow Taoist's strength is extraordinary, the title of king cannot be disgraced. Once the Dream Immortal King is enraged, it's not something that ordinary people can handle. That's why, fellow Taoist Dark North, please reconsider your actions. Don't be rash. At this moment, it was Jingyu, Situ Zhengning, and Yuan who took action together. Borrowing the power of the formation, they blocked Ziyue's grand immortal martial handprint. Can't be humiliated? Ziyue looked at the three of them. That's right, the title of king is not to be trifled with. Once violated, no one would be able to bear the consequences of the other party's wrath, especially a super genius like the Dream Immortal King. He was not even 100 years old, but his strength was already heaven-shaking, and his talent was absolutely stunning. In the future, he would definitely be able to break through to the primordial soul realm. Moreover, because she had condensed a first gray golden core, she had 9 golden core shackles. Once she broke through the golden core shackles, the shackles would evolve into a boundless power of creation, which would greatly increase her strength. Once she reaches the primordial soul realm, she would definitely be one of the strongest cultivators in the primordial soul realm. Her combat strength would be astounding, and she would be able to dominate the world. Jingyu quickly explained. The other two nodded in agreement. They were afraid that Ziyue would act rashly and cause the Dream Immortal King to vent her anger on them and attack them. On the other side, Li Mengchen, who was on the city wall, heard this and relaxed. He could not help but reveal a trace of pride. He did not dare to say much, but he could not help but hold his anger in. As the Dream Immortal King's younger brother, he had never been humiliated like this in the entire Gusha mountain range. How could he be threatened like this? As his eyes dimmed, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He had already made up his mind to take revenge 10 times, 100 times over. Can't be humiliated as a king. But can I be humiliated as a king? Zua said calmly as he struck out with his palm again. Rumble. In the void, the formation moved again and turned into an invisible light wave. It seemed to be trying to block Zua's palm print. However, at this moment, Zua's black bead in his body shook violently. Immediately, a strange aura radiated out and spread out, landing on the light wave of the formation. Sizzle. After a slight vibration, a large area of space suddenly became illusory. Then, Zua's palm print seemed to be unaffected. It broke through the formation with irresistible force and struck down violently. This was the great immortal martial handprint. The reason why it was not affected by the formation was that Zua had borrowed the power of the North Underworld cave. The immortal martial handprint was extremely magical. It even had a trace of the power of space. At this moment, Zua had borrowed the power of space to send out his palm print without being affected by the formation. No! Li Mengqian's expression changed drastically. The jade pendant she wore shook violently and turned into powder. Following that, an extremely beautiful image of a fairy stepped out from the jade pendant. It was as if the spirit of heaven and earth had stolen the fortune of heaven and earth. Her eyes were cold, and her figure seemed to be illusory. However, when she reached out her hands from her sleeves, they were like specks of stars. They were extremely fast. Chi! The star finger turned into a stream of light. Not only did it break through the great immortal martial handprint, but it also rushed towards Zua at an extremely fast speed. Doppelganger Jade Pendant. The Dream Immortal King really thinks highly of young Master Li. She is willing to pay such a high price to refine a doppelganger jade pendant. Apart from the precious materials, a doppelganger jade pendant requires the refiner to cut out a part of his divine thought and enter the jade pendant. It can only be formed after 3 years of nourishment. Its value is even higher than that of a high-grade golden core treasure. This doppelganger jade pendant has 70% of the Dream Immortal King's combat strength. This means that this attack is at least comparable to the full strength attack of a peak golden core realm expert. It is much more ferocious than that of perfected Lord Spirit restriction. This is normal. Even 70% of a regal realm expert's combat strength is not comparable to that of a late golden core realm cultivator. As Situ Zhengning and the others discussed among themselves, they felt relieved. I have guessed that Li Mengqian has a treasure that can threaten me. So it is this doppelganger jade pendant. Zua's eyes flickered as he came to a realization. Then, his expression did not change as he waved it forward calmly. Chapter 628. In an instant, a bronze mirror appeared in front of him like a screen of light. Ziyue had obtained this bronze mirror from perfected Lord Qianyuan when he killed him. It had reached the level of a superior grade golden core treasure. Its defensive power was extremely strong, and it could reflect damage and refract attacks. It was a treasure that the other party had deliberately prepared to deal with by Ziyue. Boom! Coincidentally, after the starlight destroyed by Ziyue's grand immortal martial handprint, it rushed in front of him like a hot knife through butter and slammed into the bronze mirror. Chi chi chi. Ziyue's pure purple elixir energy was quickly depleted as he tried his best to maintain the bronze mirror. Buzz buzz buzz. The copper mirror shuddered violently and blocked the ray of light with brute force. Then, a special power was activated from the bronze mirror. Immediately after, the starlight was like a stream of light, rapidly flying backward and bouncing off. This is the Heaven and Earth Reversal Mirror. It can reflect divine power attacks and create unexpected effects. It is perfected Lord Qianyuan's protective treasure. As expected, perfected Lord Qianyuan died at the hands of perfected Lord Baiming. Situ Zhengning, the palace master of the 9-star Dao Palace, shouted in a low voice. Humph! The Dream Immortal King's phantom snorted and slashed again. Like a flying immortal, A ferocious saber light shot out like a shooting star. This blade glow was vast and mighty, as if the Milky Way had struck down from the nine heavens. The ferocious blade aura caused the air to evaporate. From top to bottom, it revealed a clear airwave. Chi! There was a crisp sound. The saber light struck the starlight and quickly destroyed it. Without losing momentum, it landed on the heaven and earth reversal mirror in front of Ziyue. Before Ziyue's heaven and earth reversal mirror could do anything, it was suddenly wrapped in a strange spiritual light. It paused for a moment and was sent flying by the saber light. It was the Dream Immortal King's phantom that had sealed the power of the heaven and earth reversal mirror. As expected of an immortal king, even if it's just a doppelganger. Regardless of whether it's an attack technique, battle experience, or battle awareness, they are all extremely powerful. They are far superior to the average Golden Core Realm expert. Ziyue raised his brows and could not help but reveal a trace of surprise in his heart. However, even at this moment, he still did not reveal his full battle power. Regardless of whether it was the Dharma body that could increase one's strength or the heaven patching technique that could repair any technique, they were all his trump cards. Unless it was necessary, he would not reveal them. As far as he was concerned, even though this clone's battle prowess was strong, the pressure it gave him was not enough, nor was it enough to move him. Therefore, Ziyue's expression did not change. Lightning flashed on his body as he calmly dodged the remaining force of the saber light. He then stretched out his hand and slashed forward. Without a sound, a black thread turned into a stream of light and disappeared in a flash. This attack was none other than the magnetic slash. Even without the support of the heaven patching technique and the godly spiritual physique, the power of the great magnetic slash, which had reached the first level of the peak of the Golden Elixir realm, was unleashed by his purple extreme elixir core energy. The magnetic slash was extremely fast. In a flash, it was in front of the Dream Immortal King's doppelganger. Oh no, the Dream Immortal King's doppelganger's expression changed. Her originally cold expression became even colder as her eyes darkened. She suddenly straightened her hands, and her fingertips flashed like flowers. It was as if she was connecting the Tao of heaven and earth. Vaguely, there was the power of Tao law dancing on her fingertips. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The surrounding heaven and earth suddenly froze. In the void, a round shield that looked like the 8 trigrams appeared. The moment the round shield appeared, the magnetic slash was silently slashed out and cut the round shield. Poof! With a crisp sound, the 8 trigrams round shield shattered in an instant. It was directly cut in half by the attack. Next, the metamagnetic slash didn't slow down and landed on Dream Immortal King's clone. With a bang, it turned into a ball of light and scattered in all directions. Then, it did not stop there. Like a flash of light, it landed on Li Mingchen behind the Dream Immortal King. No, Li Mingchen's eyes widened. Before he could react, he felt a slight chill in his head and body. The whole thing was cut in half. Among them, the destructive power of magnetism had instantly killed him, cutting off his life force. Dead. Li Mingchen was dead. Boom. In the end, all of these slashes landed on the city wall at the same time. From top to bottom, there was a bottomless chasm. In this chasm, there was a strong magnetic slash. Just by scanning it with one's divine consciousness, one would feel a piercing pain in one's heart. After Ziyue's attack, the scene became silent. Everyone was extremely shocked. They could not believe it. The Dream Immortal King's doppelganger was defeated. It was destroyed by Ziyue's attack, even if it was only a doppelganger with only 70% of her full strength. However, the Dream Immortal King was a regal realm expert after all. Her doppelganger was also powerful and comparable to a peak Golden Core realm cultivator. In the end, it was destroyed by Ziyue. Most importantly, Li Mingchen was also dead. Li Mingchen was arrogant and unscrupulous. Countless people wanted him dead, and he deserved it. Countless people would applaud him. However, he was the Dream Immortal King's younger brother after all. She thought highly of him. Previously, there were two second-rate sects who had offended Li Mingchen. Even now, their sects were still in tatters. Their sects were destroyed, and even if there were any remaining cultivators in those sects, they had no choice but to change their names and become rogue cultivators. This shows how much the Dream Immortal King thought highly of him. Perfected Lord Darknorth dared to kill him. He is indeed brave and admirable. However, it's a pity. It's a pity that an expert of his generation is about to die. You can't say that, right? This perfected Lord Darknorth is definitely not weak. After this battle, you and I have learned a lot. He killed 3 Golden Core realm experts. Among them, Perfected Lord Zhong and Perfected Lord Zhao were only early-stage Golden Core realm cultivators. However, Perfected Lord Restriction Spirit was definitely not weak. He had already reached the late-stage Golden Core realm. Not to mention, the Dream Immortal King's doppelganger also attacked at the end. This doppelganger was also extremely powerful. At least, it was stronger than Perfected Lord Restriction Spirit and was comparable to a peak Golden Core realm expert. However, they were all defeated by Perfected Lord Darknorth. This showed that his strength was definitely at the peak of the Golden Core realm. With such strength, he would definitely not be able to defeat a Regal Realm expert. However, it shouldn't be difficult to escape, right? Chapter 629. Not hard to escape? Looks like you know nothing about the strength of a Regis. The Emperor's attacks were strong, but that was only one aspect of it. Their speed and defense were just as strong. Perfected Lord Darknorth is indeed powerful, but as long as he's not a Regis, his speed, defense, cultivation technique, and even his endurance in battle will be inferior to a Regis. Therefore, no matter what he does, he won't be able to escape from a Regis and will definitely die. Unless what? Unless he escapes immediately and leaves Gusha Mountain Range as soon as possible and hides in a perilous place. Or he can find an Essence Soul Realm expert to protect him. Only then will he have a chance of survival. Also, it might not be safe. This was because not many Primordial Soul Realm experts would risk offending an Emperor for the sake of an early-stage Golden Core Realm cultivator. This Regis has amazing potential and is less than 100 years old. He'll definitely reach the Essence Soul Realm in the future, so it's even more important to be cautious. As for hiding in a perilous place, it's even more dangerous and the chances of dying are higher. It's not advisable. A group of cultivators looked at the scene in shock and could not help but discuss. Bai Ziyu was indifferent to the discussions of these cultivators. His indifferent gaze swept towards Situ Zhongning and the other 2 Golden Core experts, and then his mind moved. The Darknorth flying sword flashed past. Poof, poof, poof. The cultivators who were frozen in place by his shadow domain were quickly killed by him. Those who killed would be killed by others. Since these people dared to attack him, they must have been prepared to be killed by him. Naturally, he would not show any mercy. The scene was dead silent. No one dared to stop or make a sound. Even Jingyu, Situ Zhongning, and Yu1, who were experts in the later stage of the Golden Elixir realm, could not help but feel a chill in their hearts when they faced Bai Ziyu. Even Perfected Lord Restriction Spirit, who was not weaker than them, and the Dream Immortal King's clone, who was stronger than them, were not a match for Perfected Lord Darknorth and were all killed. How would they dare to show up? Therefore, no one moved an inch. Their hearts were incomparably complicated. Is true Lord Darknorth really only at the early Golden Core stage? His battle prowess was so overwhelming. Even if he was using peerless mystical abilities that he had mastered to the perfection stage, it was still impossible for him to possess such overwhelming strength. Could it be that he wasn't just a first-grade alchemist? Amethyst Golden Pill? Could it be that when he broke through to the Golden Elixir realm, he condensed an extreme violet Golden Elixir, which is above the first gray Golden Elixir, and there are a total of 10 Golden Elixir chains above the Golden Elixir? Jingyu was shocked as he mumbled in his heart. Fortunately, I wasn't tempted by my disciple's suggestion. If I really do attack True Monarch Darknorth, I probably won't be able to escape death even with True Monarch Spirit Restriction and the others. However, True Monarch Dark North did kill True Monarch Qian Yuan of the 9-star Dao Palace. Now that the upper echelons are enraged, there's no way they'll let this matter rest. He didn't know if anyone had already accepted the mission to kill True Monarch Dark North. However, I have to report the details of this battle to my superiors as they are. As for the outcome, it's not something I can control. I'll try my best not to get involved. Situ Zhengming rejoiced once more. He was glad that he was mature and prudent enough to not be tempted by the rewards offered by the upper echelons. Otherwise, he would have been one of those who died this time. Even if True Monarch Dark North didn't condense the legendary Amethyst Golden Pill, he definitely has a special bloodline that allows him to unleash battle prowess that far surpasses his cultivation level. His strength is unfathomable. He's only at the early Golden Core stage now. Once he breaks through, his strength will soar again, and he'll definitely become a titled king in the future. If I can rope him in, Yuan couldn't help but size up Ziyue again. He suddenly thought of the dream immortal king, and his heart trembled. He quickly dismissed the idea of trying to recruit him. Compared to a true titled king, Ziyue only had a chance of becoming one. He naturally knew what was more important. Moreover, he didn't know if True Monarch Dark North would be able to escape the dream immortal king's pursuit. Of course, he was in awe of Ziyue's combat strength. Therefore, even though he had given up on the idea of recruiting Ziyue, he had made up his mind to warn the sect's experts not to provoke him. He didn't want to be taught a lesson like Li Mengqian's in Sky Mist sect. Ziyue didn't stay in Sky Mist Immortal City for long. After slaughtering all the experts, he took the opportunity to collect all the corpses and storage bags. With a flash of his body, he stepped into the air and left. This battle can be said to be easy. However, it's said that Li Mengqian has an older sister who's a titled king. It's not a good thing to be targeted by a titled king. Ziyue sat on the warship and allowed it to soar through the air. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Emperor-level martial artists were indeed powerful. Although he wasn't afraid, he didn't want to be constantly on guard against any possible pursuit. Might as well go straight to Immortal Cloud sect and get rid of Li Mengqian. Ziyue couldn't help but have this thought. With his character, he naturally wanted to get rid of this problem once and for all. However, he gave up on this idea after thinking about it. Immortal Cloud sect was a top sect in Gusha Mountain Range. In terms of strength, because of the existence of the Dream Immortal King, it was even stronger than Xing Su sect in Piercing Cloud Mountain Range. It was only below the number 1 sect in Gusha Mountain Range, Sky Mist sect. The protective formation was also very powerful. It could resist and even suppress primordial spirit experts. No matter how confident he was in his own strength, he knew that he was still a distance away from a true primordial spirit expert. It was naturally difficult to break the protective formation of Immortal Cloud sect and kill the Dream Immortal King. Moreover, as far as he knew, the Dream Immortal King was still in seclusion. Once an immortal technique cultivator went into seclusion, it would take at least a few months to 100 years. He didn't have the patience to wait. Since the idea of going to Immortal Cloud sect isn't feasible, then I can go to Star Yuan Immortal City first. Star Yuan Immortal City is adjacent to Star Yuan Divine Mountain. Most importantly, Heavenly Spirit Sect's 9 Extreme Sword King is still recruiting experts there. If I mix in, I might have a chance to learn his Dao technique, the 9 Extreme Sword Art. Ziyue was also very interested in that Dao technique. After all, compared to the Heaven Patching technique, the 9 Extreme Sword Art was a pure offensive technique. It was extremely powerful. Not to mention, this sword art was a sword art that could be combined with his natal flying sword. The two complemented each other, and the power would be amplified. Naturally, he was even more tempted. Chapter 630. With this thought in mind, Ziyue lifted his gaze and looked at the attributes interface. My soul energy has increased by more than 40 million points. Finally, my soul energy has reached more than 320 million points. Although the strength of the cultivators he killed in this battle was far less than that of the 3 demon monarchs he killed before, the 3 Gold Core Realm cultivators and dozens of Deity Realm cultivators added up to 40 million soul energy, which was almost the same as what he had killed before. He was very satisfied with this. In addition to the soul energy, I have also gained a lot from this battle. Ziyue was indifferent, but when he waved his hand, dozens of storage bags appeared in front of him, and his eyes lit up. He knew very well that it was difficult for the Divine Realm cultivators to have good things in their hands that could move him. But this kind of refreshing feeling, which was like opening a treasure chest, was what he had been looking forward to the most. Each storage bag was like a treasure chest. Before opening it, no one knew what kind of treasures were in it. If he was lucky, he would get a precious treasure, a top-level cultivation method, or a top-level divine sense. If he was unlucky, he would get a pile of spirit stones at least. Without hesitation, he used the 10,000 flame furnace to refine the countless formations and restrictions. Under his precise control of the flames, they rose up and were destroyed, vanishing into thin air. Puff, puff, puff. In a short time, the storage bags were broken by him one by one. Then they were scattered quickly. As expected, most of the treasures of the Divine Realm cultivators may be very precious in their eyes. There is no lack of top-grade magic treasures such as the double section sword, the true magic staff, the size Rui seal, and so on. There are also countless magic treasures of the upper grade and the middle grade, but they're not very useful to me. On the contrary, spirit stones, jade slips, a few talisman puppets and elixirs of the 4th grade, and some 3rd grade and 4th grade are more important to me. Bai Ziyue scanned the pile of colorful treasures with his divine sense. He had a rough idea of what they were. Among the Divine Realm cultivators, only 2 of them had Gold Core Realm treasures. One was a flying sword, and the other was a pair of boots. Both of them were low-grade Gold Core Realm treasures. Low-grade Gold Core Realm treasures were very powerful for the Divine Realm cultivators. Not to mention the flying sword, the Immortal Ascension shoes could greatly increase a practitioner's speed. If a practitioner at the peak of the Divine Realm used the Immortal Ascension shoes, his speed would not be worse than that of an ordinary practitioner at the early stage of the Gold Core Realm. Unfortunately, even if that cultivator had such a treasure, he could not escape under the restriction of Bai Ziyue's shadow domain and could only be slaughtered. The 3 Gold Core Realm cultivators have a lot of treasures, and spirit chi. At least, in comparison, Li Mengqian, who was supposed to be rich, did not have as many treasures as I thought. She is only a little better than an ordinary cultivator at the early Gold Core Realm. Bai Ziyue compared them silently. As he picked and chose, he sealed a portion of the Dharma treasures in the Paradise Vault. Of course, he would not forget to share some of the treasures and spread them around the cave vault. He treated them as opportunities and left them for the fated people. This was also one of his little interests. Perhaps these treasures weren't precious, but to many mortals or low-level cultivators, their value was extremely high. Moreover, these treasures often had some special uses that were enough to help low-level cultivators accumulate some advantages in the early stages of cultivation. Next is the Jade Slip Eyes. The 3 Gold Core Realm cultivators and dozens of Divine Realm cultivators have a lot of Jade Slip Eyes. There are more than 1,500 of them. In addition, there are 4 stone tablets of inheritance. 2 of the stone tablets of inheritance are from Immortal Restriction Spirit. As for the other 2, they are from Li Mengqian. After all, Li Mengqian was the brother of the Dream Immortal King. Even though he had spent a lot of treasures recklessly, he still valued and looked forward to the stone tablets of inheritance. Soon, he scanned them with his divine will. Instantly, the information in the 4 great legacy stone steels flashed through his mind. Dream Immortal Art, Star Shattering Finger, Size Manipulation, Grand Forbidden Spirit Art. Ziyue scanned the 4 stone tablets of inheritance. When he saw the introduction of the last Grand Divine Power, his heart skipped a beat. He was a little shocked. Grand Forbidden Spirit Art? This is the Grand Forbidden Spirit Art? The Grand Forbidden Spirit Art was not a very powerful Grand Divine Power. However, he had obtained a divine power in the early stage called the Minor Forbidden Spirit Art. At that time, he thought there must be a Grand Forbidden Spirit Art above the Minor Forbidden Spirit Art. Unfortunately, he did not get the inheritance, so he did not know what it was. Who would have thought that at this time, he would unexpectedly obtain this great Forbidden Spirit technique and thus complete it? With the Minor Forbidden Spirit Art, when I cultivate this Grand Forbidden Spirit Art, I can use it without having to cultivate it again. This is a pleasant surprise. He was very excited and quickly sank his thoughts into it. After confirming that it came from the same source as the Minor Forbidden Spirit Art, his eyes lit up. As for the other three legacies, the Dream Immortal Art should be the Dream Immortal King's self-created technique. What is left on this legacy is only the complete version of her Divine Realm technique. It is truly exquisite. Furthermore, include a lot of acupoints, reaching a total of 1227. This is definitely the person with the highest number of acupoints that I have ever met. Baiziwa browsed through the cultivation method that the other party had created, and a hint of curiosity and admiration could not help but flash through his eyes. The more he cultivated, the more he knew that the number of acupoints ignited when a cultivator was in the Aperture Enlightening realm would have a huge impact on their future potential. However, before that, who had the determination and perseverance to cultivate silently and ignite as many acupoints as possible? Cultivate without regrets. Once a cultivator broke through from the Aperture Enlightening realm to the God realm, there was no room for regrets. The reason why he was able to ignite 1296 acupoints was all thanks to the attribute panel. As for the Dream Immortal King, even if she had the opportunity, her attribute panel was definitely not as powerful as his. In addition, she came from a sect like the Immortal Cloud sect. It was only a second-rate sect in the early stage. Because of her, it was promoted to a top-level immortal sect. The other party's talent was truly the best he had ever seen. Chapter 631. The Dream Immortal King is indeed a king-ranked expert, the top genius of the Gusha mountain range. Even though this Dream Immortal technique only has the Divine Realm chapter, it is not as good as my heaven-devouring Divine Transformation mantra in terms of acupoints. However, it is not as good as my heaven-devouring Divine Transformation mantra in terms of acupoints. If I can get the Dream Immortal King's Golden Core cultivation technique, I might be able to create my own Golden Core cultivation technique. As Baiziwa looked at the cultivation technique, he was moved by the many wonderful ideas contained within. He became even more curious about the Golden Core cultivation technique. It was a pity that there was no Golden Core level inheritance on the Legacy Stone tablet. He could only turn his attention to the remaining two inheritances. This star-shattering finger must be the finger seal used by the Dream Immortal Monarch's clone. It's indeed a peerless technique. There are more than 1,200 acupoints in it. With a point of the finger, the stars would shatter. It is definitely an offensive technique that is not weaker than the magnetic slash. As for this size manipulation technique, it was actually a rare transformation type, great divine ability. After using it, the user can be as big as a mountain. With a step, the ground will collapse and water will form a lake. With a wave of the hand, the mountain will collapse and the river will flow backward. When small, it is like a mosquito. No matter how small the gap is, it can enter and leave freely. Fortunately, my 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword is a sword-shaped cage. There is no gap in the middle. Otherwise, if the Restriction Spirit Master used this size manipulation technique, he might be able to escape. It can really be considered a rare and exquisite great divine ability. Ziwa looked at the cultivation technique, inheritances, and great superpower and was overjoyed. Regardless of whether it was the Dream Immortal technique, star-shattering finger, size manipulation, or the great taboo spiritual technique, they were all powerful inheritances. Any one of them would be tempted by countless people. Now that they were all in his hands, his confidence and means had increased by a few notches. After a while, he came back to his senses from this state of mind. Then, he raised his eyes and looked at the attribute panel. He saw that the great taboo spiritual technique was at the beginner level. He could not help but smile. Because I've already cultivated the minor forbidden spirit art, I've saved the time needed to reach the entry level of this great forbidden spirit art. I can directly upgrade it to the entry level. If that's the case, I'll be able to raise it to perfection first. Baiziwa looked at the Great Taboo Spirit Spells Beginner on the attribute panel and quickly tapped on it without hesitation. Great Taboo Spiritual Technique. Great Taboo Spiritual Technique. From the beginner level to the beginner level. 7 million isn't a small number, but compared to the number of souls I have now, it's nothing. Upgrade, Baiziwa mumbled to himself, and chose to upgrade without any hesitation. Soon, Su's spiritual cultivation, spiritual technique. Spiritual technique, spiritual technique, technique, spiritual technique, technique, techniques, 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 and techniques, 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 and the techniques, techniques, techniques. Spiritual technique, spiritual technique. It was as if he had gone through hundreds of years of tireless cultivation in this short period of time. He had directly cultivated this great taboo spiritual technique to the beginner level. Great taboo spiritual technique at the beginner level is powerful, but it does not help my strength much. Continue. Only great taboo spiritual technique at the complete realm is suitable for my opponents. It will give me a greater advantage when facing strong opponents. Ziyue was very clear. With his current strength, ordinary peak golden elixir realm cultivators were no match for him. They could not pose a threat to him. Only regal realm cultivators, or even stronger than regal realm cultivators, could make him take them seriously and call them strong opponents. Such existences were powerful and had unparalleled combat strength. Naturally, they needed great taboo spiritual techniques at the complete realm to pose a threat to them. Soon, Suemo began to upgrade again. Great taboo spiritual technique, great taboo spiritual technique, small taboo spiritual technique, to the beginner level. Great taboo spiritual technique, great taboo spiritual technique, great taboo spiritual technique, to the complete realm. Upgrade. Upgrade. In a short period of time, Ziyue upgraded consecutively. Suddenly, his mind was clear. He knew the great taboo spiritual technique like the back of his hand. It was as if he had gone through hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation and directly cultivated this great taboo spiritual technique to the complete realm. Great taboo spiritual technique has reached the complete realm. My offensive techniques have also been added. Naturally, my strength has also increased to a certain extent. But correspondingly, my soul energy has decreased by almost 49 million soul energy after this upgrade. Now, there are only 270 million soul energy left. Ziyue looked at the attribute panel again, but he did not feel regretful. Compared to the consumption of soul energy, he was naturally more concerned about the increase of his strength and techniques. Immortal Cloud Sect, Dream Immortal Hall. A peerlessly beautiful woman suddenly opened her eyes. Her brows were tightly knitted, and her eyes were full of unwillingness. Just a little bit more, and I could directly break through the ninth shackle. But in the end, as she muttered to herself, a huge golden core as big as a water tank rushed out of her body. This golden core was extremely big, but the most eye-catching thing was the layers of holy light on her golden core, which were like immortal clouds. These immortal clouds were stacked on top of each other, and there were a total of 8 layers. She looked like a god or an immortal, otherworldly and eye-catching. The only thing that was somewhat eye-catching was the only remaining black mark on the golden core. This mark was the Tao mark of the golden core, which was also known as the golden core shackle. 8 immortal clouds, 1 Tao mark. This meant that this person had condensed a first gray golden core. When the golden core was formed, there were a total of 9 great Tao marks left behind, forming 9 shackles. But now, he had already broken through 8 of the shackles. My doppelganger has died. In the end, it has a certain impact on my main body. Now that my mind is shaken, I have finally lost the opportunity to directly break through the ninth shackle in one go. A cold glint flashed across her eyes. It was only at this moment that life returned to her eyes, along with a hint of anger. This doppelganger of mine has always been with Li Mengqian. Now that this doppelganger has been activated and has directly died, does this mean that something has happened to Li Mengqian? The woman frowned her beautiful brows. She was extremely disappointed in her younger brother, and most of the time, she even hated him. But he was after all her only family member now, and she naturally cared about him. Of course, her care was at most a responsibility, and it was not like the rumors of spoiling her brother. She just did not bother to explain. Chapter 632. If I miss this opportunity, I don't know when I'll be able to break through the ninth golden core shackle, overcome the lightning tribulation, and break through to the nascent soul realm. Regardless of whether my useless brother is fine or not, anyone who stands in my way is my greatest enemy. Our enemies must die. Dream immortal king, Li Mengqian murmured and waved her hand. Rumble. In an instant, the formation that enveloped the entire hall was broken. Then, several voice transmission talismans rushed into the room like swallows. Li Mengqian waved her hand slightly, and with a sweep of her divine sense, she connected the voice transmission talismans one by one, and very soon, she obtained the information she wanted from them. True, Lord Dark North, when he broke through to the Golden Core realm, he seemed to have condensed a first-grade Golden Core among the three upper grades. It might even be the legendary Amethyst Golden Core. His battle prowess is comparable to the peak of the Golden Core realm. He also has a heavenly abode treasure and 100 drops of primordial spirit essence that can increase his strength. My younger brother is indeed dead. Not only is Li Mengqian dead, but True Lord Spirit Restriction, True Lord Zhong, and True Lord Zhao are also dead. Li Mengqian's eyes were cold, and her face was filled with a cold glint. Then her body moved, and she quickly turned into a ray of light that shot out of the sect. True Lord Dark North has indeed entered the Gusha mountain range from the cloud-piercing mountain range. He caused such a huge commotion as soon as he appeared. It took us a while to find him. In a restaurant in the Immortal City, two cultivators, one old and one young, sat across from each other. One of them had white hair and a face that seemed to be wrinkled and full of bitterness. It was Patriarch Bitter Sonnet. The other person had a majestic figure and a glint in his eyes. It was Demon Lord Guahai. The two of them inquired around the cloud-piercing mountain range, and after Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's calculations, they finally confirmed that True Lord Dark North was the murderer who killed Demon Monarch Wu Wei and the other two true Devil Sect experts. After a fruitless search, they stepped into the Gusha mountain range helplessly. Soon after, they heard rumors about the battle in the Heavenly Mist Immortal City and hurriedly rushed to the Heavenly Mist Immortal City in high spirits. But soon, the two of them were confused again. Only when they arrived did they realize that true Monarch Dark North had already left. No one knew where the other party was at this moment. Perfected Cultivator Dark North is powerful and has great potential. He's definitely a peerless genius. In less than 100 years, he'll become famous in the firmament territory and possess the battle strength of a king. However, the most troublesome thing was his ability to conceal himself from the heavens. Even I can't detect his location, even if I use all my means and use a treasure to calculate. Patriarch Bitter Lettuce gulped down a cup of spirit wine with a bitter expression on his face. The master and disciple duo were here as punishment. They had only discovered that true Monarch Dark North was the one who had killed Demon Monarch Wu Wei and the others. This wasn't a big deal. The most important thing was to capture and kill the other party. But from their point of view, Bai Ziyue was crafty and careful, constantly concealing himself from the heavens. Even if they had superior combat strength, especially Patriarch Bitterchard, who was an early-stage primordial spirit realm existence. His strength was astounding, and he could easily crush a Regis. However, there was nothing they could do if they couldn't find the other party. Master, I heard that the heavenly spirit sect's sovereign peak's chief disciple, the Nine Extinction Sword King, Zhang Dongsheng, is gathering many experts and planning to enter the Star Origin Sacred Mountain to search for the lost treasure of the previous chief disciple, the heaven-wielding bottle. This matter has spread far and wide. It's a big event recently. Do you think that true monarch Dark North will join in on the fun and run into the Star Origin Sacred Mountain as well? One had to know that Zhang Dongsheng was very generous and took out a Dao technique inheritance directly. Also, I heard that Zhang Dongsheng has publicly expressed his admiration for perfected cultivator Dark North. It's hard to guarantee that the other party won't be tempted. Demon Monarch Guahai suddenly thought of something and guessed in a low voice. It's not impossible. However, even though this Zhang Dongsheng was generous, he did not say that if he wanted to cultivate this 9 extinction divine sword, he would need the assistance of 9 precious spiritual materials. Among the 9 spiritual materials, at least 3 of them are controlled by the heavenly spirit sect. They are rarely circulated in the outside world and are extremely valuable. Because of this, although the 9 extinction sword technique was extraordinary, the celestial spirit sect was not stingy in imparting it to others. As far as I know, almost every year the celestial spirit sect would organize an auction, and there would be a Dao technique inheritance of the 9 extinction sword technique on display. This was because the cost of cultivating this Dao technique was too great. Even if only one person cultivated it, it would be enough for the celestial spirit sect to make a fortune. Not to mention, even though Zhang Dongsheng had publicly stated that he was after the heaven-wielding bottle that was lost when the previous generation's chief died, if my guess was correct, what he wanted more was a kind of spiritual item that would only appear when the Star Source Sacred Mountain was in chaos. This spiritual item has the miraculous ability to help cultivators break through the shackles of the Golden Core. Otherwise, why would he choose to come to the Star Origin Sacred Mountain at this time of all times? Old ancestor Ku Chue nodded in agreement. Then, he raised his eyes and said with a cold smile, "What spiritual item?" Demon Lord Guahai could not help but raise his head in surprise. "Star Origin Sacred Stone," old ancestor Ku Chue said with a strange expression. Because Star Origin Immortal City was close to the Star Origin Sacred Mountain, it was very lively with countless experts. Not only were there deity realm experts from various sects and forces, but there were also experts from various immortal sects, other mountain ranges, and even other regions. At this moment, the 9 Extinction Sword King, Zhang Dongsheng, the Heavenly Spirit sect's king-conferred expert, made a public appearance and used the 9 Extinction Sword technique to recruit experts from various places. Immediately, the lively Star Origin Immortal City became even livelier. From time to time, one could hear people talking loudly, praising the 9 Extinction Sword King's generosity and discussing Zhang Dongsheng's strength with reverence. Ziyue was dressed in a gray Taoist robe. His aura was slightly restrained, but not completely concealed. Vaguely, he revealed a trace of the aura of an early Golden Core realm. It was not eye-catching, but it was not to the point of being belittled. He walked slowly, and his perfected shadow, domain, slowly spread out. It did not affect the surroundings at all, nor did it cause any disturbance. As long as it was a discussion between cultivators below the Golden Core realm, regardless of whether it was in a secret room of a restaurant or through spirit sense transmission, it was all under his control and passed into his ears. This is the method of an expert. The spirit sense transmission method that low-level cultivators are so proud of is just a joke in the eyes of a true expert. Even the soundproof formation in those restaurants, as long as its grade is not higher than early 4th rank, can't block my probing. By Ziyue sighed with emotion. It was only now that he truly understood why the 9-star Dao Palace was so well-informed. Why were there so many secrets that were impossible to discover in the eyes of low-level cultivators, but they were all exposed to high-level cultivators? Chapter 633. The strong could control everything. With Ziyue's current means, he could easily find out the thoughts of a mortal, a low-level cultivator, or even an aperture enlightening realm cultivator. Transcending the mortal world, transcending worldly affairs, nothing more than that. 3 days later, the 9 Extreme Sword King will set off for Star Source Sacred Mountain. This time, the 9 Extreme Sword King has recruited a total of 12 Golden Core Realm experts. Together with the 3 from the Celestial Spirit Sect, there will be a total of 15 Golden Core Realm experts. Not only that, it is said that many cultivators have also heard the news. Although they are not qualified to be recruited by the 9 Extreme Sword King, they want to take advantage of the opportunity to go as deep as possible into Star Source Sacred Mountain. It is said that 9-star deity realm experts, such as Su Ming and Zhao Jiulong from the 9-star Dao Palace, as well as a few peak deity realm experts from the Sky Mist Sect and the Immortal Cloud Sect will set off together. In total, there will be at least a few hundred deity realm experts. It is a great momentum. The discussions entered by Ziyue's ears, allowing him to gain a better understanding of the information that was being discussed. But soon, a hesitant voice was heard, which made Ziyue's heart skip a beat. This Star Source Sacred Mountain usually has a cycle every 30 years and 100 years. Every cycle, there will be a riot in the Star Source Sacred Mountain. Under the riot, the danger of the Star Source Sacred Mountain will be more than 10 times greater than before. Not only will there be many hidden areas, but there will also be countless extremely powerful star beasts appearing. Although the Stellar Origin Sacred Mountain was in turmoil, the treasures and rewards would increase exponentially, but the chances of cultivators dying would also increase significantly. I have stayed in the Star Source Immortal City for 100 years. I clearly remember that the last riot in the Star Source Sacred Mountain was 30 years ago. Now, 30 years have passed. If I am not wrong, the next riot in the Star Source Sacred Mountain is not far away. So this time, are we going or not? Go. As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. The few of us are old men who are more than 700 years old and don't have much lifespan left. Even if we can't attain the Tao and reach the Golden Core Realm, we will still have many years left. However, most of them had established cultivation clans and had juniors to protect. If we can obtain a fortuitous encounter in the Star Origin Sacred Mountain, we can risk our lives to condense our gold core. Not only will we be able to live for at least 1,000 years, but we can also help the family head prosper and develop. If we are unfortunate enough to fall, that is also our path of return. Ever since I walked out of the mountain village and embarked on the path of cultivation, I never thought about going back. I'm already satisfied with my current achievements. As for the clan, whether or not they can prosper will depend on them. Us old fellows can't care so much. All right then, let's go all out this time. While we can still move and have some strength, let's go all out. I don't want to die of old age in the family. That would be a true disgrace to us. These should be a group of old cultivators who are nearing the end of their lifespans. They plan to take advantage of this opportunity when Zhang Dongsheng leave for the Star Origin Sacred Mountain to fight to the death. However, according to the information that they revealed, the Star Origin Divine Mountain is about to erupt. Ziyue paused in his footsteps, his heart filled with shock. Since he had set foot in this place, he naturally had a certain level of understanding of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. He had also exchanged for a complete topographical map of the 1st to 4th levels in the 9-star Dao Palace. He was well aware of how dangerous the Star Origin Sacred Mountain would be when it erupted. He was even more aware that when the time came, not only would the environment be harsh, but there would also be strange winds, dark lightning, and dirty rain. There might even be spatial rifts and other dangers that were impossible to guard against. This did not include the powerful and crazy star beasts that might appear. During the eruption, the first 2 levels would be fine. However, in the 3rd level, star beasts comparable to Regis or even half-step primordial spirit realm would appear. It was because of such dangers that the Star Origin Sacred Mountain was known as a danger zone. Countless mid and late gold core, peak gold core, and even Regis gold core experts had died there. That's right. I remember Wang Weijin once said that the Regis gold core magnetism king died in the previous eruption of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. He also left me a map that clearly recorded the place where the gold core magnetism king died. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. With a flip of his hand, a jade slip appeared in his hand. With a sweep of his consciousness, the route and location on the jade slip appeared clearly in his mind. The place where the gold core magnetism king died should be in the 3rd level. However, from the route, it seems to be in the depths of the 3rd level. It won't be long before we reach the 4th level. Moreover, this area should only be revealed when the Star Origin Sacred Mountain erupts. Otherwise, it would usually be in a folded space. Ziyue made a brief comparison and came up with a plan. However, he also decided that if the eruption of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain were to happen, he would go along with it. After all, the Gold Core Magnetism King was a Regis Gold Core expert. Moreover, according to Wang Weijin, he also had a Dao technique inheritance. It was an advanced version of the Great Gold Core Magnetic Slash. Once he could obtain it, he would not need to continue cultivating at all. Instead, he would be able to improve himself. It would be of great help to him. With a flash of his hand, the jade slip disappeared. Then, Ziyue moved his feet and arrived in front of a huge mansion. In front of the mansion, there were 2 divine realm cultivators guarding. When they saw Ziyue, they were shocked. They hurriedly bowed respectfully and asked, "Senior, may I know why you are here?" "I am Pinnacle Monarch. I heard that the 9 Extinction Sword King invited cultivators to enter the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. I specially came to respond." Ziyue calmly cupped his hands and said, "Senior, please wait for a moment. I will go in and inform them." One of them was startled when he heard this. He hurriedly rushed into the courtyard. The other person did not dare to be negligent. He bowed and welcomed by Ziyue, guiding him in. Soon, Ziyue entered the courtyard. There was no need to say more about the scenery of the mountain, the lake, and the scenery. It had been specially arranged and was very clever. There was also a sense of indifference and elegance. Although it was not as good as the Dream Immortal residence, when he was in seclusion in the heavenly mist immortal city, it was still considered a wonderful place. However, what really caught Ziyue's attention was the corner of the courtyard where 3 cultivators were sitting and discussing Dao. The 3 of them were in the early Golden Core realm. They each sat in a corner of the courtyard and explained their understanding of the Great Dao. At this time, they were discussing the Great Dao characters. They mentioned that some of the Great Dao characters were in harmony with heaven and earth. This touched Ziyue's heart. Chapter 634. The characters of the Great Dao were the characters that were most in tune with the Great Dao of heaven and earth in the immortal spell world. They were the inheritance imprints of the Great Dao of ancient powers. It was said that the true ancient cultivation techniques were all recorded with the Great Dao characters. However, because of the changes in the cultivators over the years and the difficulty of passing down the Great Dao characters, those without great perseverance would not be able to achieve it. Those who were not at the Golden Core realm and above would not be able to pry into the secrets within. Therefore, there were very few people who could master all of them. Ziyue had mastered more than 500 Great Dao characters. Apart from the 100 that he had obtained from Daoist Wuju's cave in the ancient Desolation City, he had also obtained a badge from the many powerful enemies he had killed in the Qingshu sect. However, compared to the total of over 5,000 regular characters of the Great Dao and over 12,000 unconventional characters of the Great Dao, the 500 or so characters that he had mastered were a little too few. It was rare to meet someone who was proficient in this Dao. He immediately looked sideways and stopped in his tracks. These Great Dao characters are exquisite beyond compare. Unfortunately, it's too difficult. Every Great Dao character requires at least a month of painstaking cultivation to be able to comprehend the true meaning within. More than 5,000 regular Great Dao characters would require at least 400 years to completely master them. Even with the lifespan of us Golden Core Realm cultivators that can reach 3,000 years, we can't bear such a waste. After a long discussion, one of them could not help but sigh. This is actually related to one's talent. I heard that there was a genius who was proficient in this Tao, who comprehended all 5,000 great Tao characters in less than 100 years. Moreover, because the great Tao characters contain the great Tao of heaven and earth and the principles of the operation of all things, that person's cultivation speed did not slow down at all. In 100 years, his realm soared continuously, from the early Golden Core realm to the late Golden Core realm. You're really amazing. Another cultivator with silver-white hair that seemed to be very hard and erect, like a hedgehog, couldn't help but speak. As far as I know, only the Super Sect have the 5,000 regular Great Tao characters. For example, the Heavenly Spirit Sect, the Myriad Sect, the 9-Star Tao Palace, and so on. Even the number 1 Immortal Sect of the Gusha Mountain Range, the Sky Mist Sect, has no more than 1,000 Great Tao characters recorded. We can't even collect all the great Tao characters, let alone comprehend the true meaning within them. The last cultivator in a flowery Taoist robe shook his head and said, "It's precisely because of this that we have to gather together. At the same time that we're discussing the profundities of the characters of the Grand Tao, we're also exchanging knowledge and trying our best to gather even more characters of the Grand Tao." When the hedgehog-headed cultivator heard this, he laughed heartily. Exactly, as it should be. The other two couldn't help but nod in agreement. In that case, I wonder if you can add one more person to the list when you're exchanging what you need? Meanwhile, a gentle voice could be heard all of a sudden. "Oh, how should I address you, fellow Taoist?" The hedgehog-headed cultivator had long since noticed Ziyue's arrival. Previously, they had been engrossed in the Tao discussion and did not want to pay attention to him. Now, however, they were somewhat curious. "I am Taoist Wuxia. This time around, I have come because of your reputation. I would like to join 9 Extinction Sword Kings team and explore the Star Source Sacred Mountain together." Bai Ziyue stretched out his hands and cupped his fists. "Taoist Wuxia, that's a rather impressive name. Judging from your appearance and bearing, I believe you must be from an extraordinary background." The cultivator with the hedgehog head glanced at Bai Ziyue and praised him. Then he pointed at the cultivator who spoke first and the cultivator in the flowery Taoist robe and introduced, "This fellow Taoist is true Monarch Drizzle. He's the mountain lord of Mount Jinyu. This is perfected cultivator Zhu of the Crepe Myrtle Sword Sect. His swordsmanship is unparalleled. As for me, I'm a rogue cultivator. My name is Taoist Drunken Beard. Greetings, perfected cultivator Shiyu, perfected cultivator Zhu, and perfected cultivator Drunken Beard." Bai Ziyue greeted him politely and said, "Taoist Wuxia, it's not a problem to exchange the characters of the Grand Tao. I'm just wondering how many characters of the Grand Tao you have mastered. Have you mastered all of them? How's the effect?" Perfected cultivator Shiyu sized up Ziyue and asked, 515. Ziyue fell silent for a moment before saying. All of a sudden, the eyes of the 3 of them lit up. The 3 of them came from different backgrounds, but they did not master many characters of the Grand Tao. More than 600 was already considered a lot in their opinion. Therefore, they quickly reached a deal. Immediately after, the 4 of them waved their hands at the same time, and an inheritance stele appeared in each of their hands. There were characters of the Grand Tao recorded on the steles. Among them, there were more than 500 characters of the Grand Tao recorded on Ziyue's inheritance stele, and there were more than 200 characters of the Grand Tao recorded on it. After comparing the characters of the Grand Tao, the acquaintances immediately began to record on their respective inheritance steles. 888. This number is quite auspicious. Ziyue looked at the characters of the Grand Tao recorded on his inheritance stele and felt a sense of satisfaction. Even though it would still take some time for him to truly master all the characters of the Grand Tao, the gains this time were enough to make him excited. He felt that this trip was not in vain. "Senior Wuxia, my master would like to see you." Just as Ziyue was exchanging information with perfected Lord Zui, who, and the others, and gaining a lot, the cultivator who stepped into the mansion first hurried over and said respectfully, "Please lead the way." Ziyue said and greeted perfected Lord Zue, who, and the others before following the cultivator deep into the mansion. Then, Ziyue soon stepped into a living room. There were also several cultivators gathered in the living room. Ziyue glanced at them one by one, and his pupils constricted suddenly. Among the people present, apart from the legendary Jiuju Sword King sitting at the top, Ziyue also found several familiar cultivators. Perfected Lord Push Sword, perfected Lord Ling Coffin. They were all there. In addition to them, he also found Wu Lushui and the two golden core powerhouses of the Sky Mist sect, whom he had met once in the Qingshu sect. If you remember correctly, one of them was called Gao Feng, and the other was called Wu Yu. Both of them were in the middle stage of the golden core realm. However, since Ziyue dared to appear in front of perfected Lord Ling Coffin, perfected Lord Push Sword, and the others, he was naturally fully prepared. In addition to the essential disguise, his aura had also changed tremendously because of the shadow domain. Although it was not to the extent of completely concealing his aura, it was not difficult for him to hide his life origin aura with the help of the shadow domain and change it into a new aura. Chapter 635. His appearance had changed, and his aura was different. Naturally, no matter how familiar he was, it would be difficult for him to discover his true identity. You are the Wuxia Daoist. Ziyue's mind turned, and a question suddenly came. Yes. Ziyue raised his eyebrows and saw that it was a skinny old man. He nodded. Where are you from? Who is your master? Do you have any achievements? The old man continued to ask. Ziyue couldn't help but frown slightly and said, In the end, I'm only here to make a deal. I'm here for the 9 Extinction Sword King's 9 Extinction Godly Sword. Correspondingly, I will also contribute and do what I should do. As for my background and master, there's no need to ask. As for your background and inheritance, we really don't value it. However, you have to prove to us your strength. If you're not strong enough, you're not qualified to be our teammate. Before you, we've rejected more than 10 Golden Core Realm cultivators. The old man said coldly. Then, what level of strength do I need to be recognized and obtain the inheritance of the 9 Extinction Godly Sword? Ziyue nodded and then asked. He didn't feel that it was difficult, because in the immortal spell world, strength was respected. Although the immortal spell realm had reached the Golden Core Realm, and no matter how weak it was still stronger than the God Realm cultivators. However, the gap in strength was actually larger. If one's strength was insufficient, it would be easy to drag them down and cause irreparable losses. That's simple. See that row of touchstones? Strike with all your strength. No matter what method you use, as long as you can break through 4 of them, you'll be qualified and can obtain the inheritance of the 9 Extinction Godly Sword. All right, you only have one chance. The old man's expression was calm as he said lightly. The others, one after another, looked at Ziyue with a trace of curiosity and disdain. Ziyue's immortal spell realm was only at the early Golden Core realm. How difficult would it be to break through the 4 touchstones with such an immortal spell realm? Among the people present, there were several experts at the early stage of the Gold Core realm. However, these people were either like Immortal Push Sword, who created their own cultivation methods and formed a second-grade Gold Core, whose strength was far greater than that of ordinary experts in the same realm, or like Gao Feng and Wu Yu, who were born in the Sky Mist sect, whose inheritance was much stronger than that of the Qingshu sect, where Immortal Push Sword came from. Even though Ziyue didn't reveal his background and inheritance, everyone was naturally able to discern from his clothes and slightly disorderly aura that he was either an independent cultivator of low quality or he was from a small sect. It was utterly impossible for him to erupt with a strength comparable to the 3rd level of the intermediate stage of the Golden Core realm at the initial stage of the Golden Core realm. You only need to break through 4 touchstones. Ziyue looked in the direction the old man was pointing at, and his heart became even calmer. These touchstones were the same as the ones he used in the Dream Immortal residence in the Heavenly Mist Immortal City. There was a total of 12 touchstones in a row. As long as he could break through all 12 touchstones, it would prove that his opponent had the combat strength of a king. That's simple, Ziyue said and didn't hesitate. With a thought, the flying sword in his body quickly rushed out and pierced through the touchstones like a hot knife through butter. 1, 2, 3. Then the moment it pierced through the fourth touchstone, it stopped in midair. The flying sword then flew backward. What are you talking about? The old man was about to snort coldly, but his expression suddenly changed, and he looked in the direction of the touchstones in shock. Many other cultivators who were originally looking at him coldly had a change of expression on their faces, revealing a look of surprise. One strike had pierced through 4 touchstones. This meant that Ziyue definitely had the offensive strength of the 3rd level of the intermediate stage of the Golden Core realm. However, if that was all, they wouldn't be surprised. This was because although it was rare for an early-stage Golden Core realm cultivator to break through 4 touchstones, it wasn't a big deal for some disciples of top sections. For example, the disciples of the Heavenly Spirit sect, Myriad Phenomenon sect, and other super sects who had reached the early-stage Golden Core realm could break through 4 touchstones with 1 strike if they used all their strength. However, what really shocked them was that Ziyue had not only pierced through the 4 touchstone stones without using any method of reinforcement, but he also had the strength to control the flying sword to hover in the air after that. One had to know that when a flying sword rushed out, there was usually a terrifying force driving it that would wantonly leak out. In order to restrain the force that was about to leak out, not only did it require a strong control of one's own strength, it also meant that he still had strength left after using this attack. This point alone was enough to prove his strength. It was definitely not something that an ordinary rogue cultivator or even a sect cultivator could do. Good. Taoist Wuxa's sword technique is really exquisite. Do you know what kind of great sword technique this is? At this moment, the non-extinction sword king, Zhang Dongsheng, who had been sitting on the top seat as calm as a lake, finally had a slight change in expression as he praised. 1 sword to break all techniques. Ziyue cupped his hands and bowed as he replied. He naturally wouldn't explain that the 1 sword to break all techniques he used this time wasn't a great sword technique at all. At most, it was just a divine technique. However, because of the tyrannical power of his amethyst golden core and the high level of the 1 sword to break all techniques, he could easily erupt with power that far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators of the same level. This time, it was the result of him deliberately holding back. Otherwise, if he really burst out with his full strength, the heaven-patching technique, and the godly spirit dharma body together, this attack wouldn't be able to penetrate all 12 touchstones, but at least 10 of them would be penetrated by him. 1 sword to break all techniques. It's really exquisite and tyrannical. Taoist Wuxia, you came at the right time. In 3 days, we will depart for the starry origin sacred mountain together. Besides, this is the succession of the 9 extinction godly sword. You only have half a day to comprehend it. Within half a day, regardless of whether you've completely comprehended it or not, the stone tablet of succession will automatically shatter and be destroyed. As for how much you can benefit from it, it all depends on your comprehension. Zhang Dongsheng burst out laughing upon seeing this. He waved his hand, and a stone tablet of succession flew out slowly towards Ziyue. Along with the stone tablet of inheritance, there was also a faint fluctuation of sword qi being emitted. It was Zhang Dongsheng's attempt to probe Qinnan. He wanted to use this opportunity to learn more about Ziyue's strength. Thank you, senior brother Zhang. Ziyue was well aware of this. He expressed his thanks and moved his finger slightly. He extended his hand and pointed forward. Threads of exquisite light flashed and broke the sword qi restriction that Zhang Dongsheng had secretly placed on the inheritance stone steel. The sword qi dissipated, and Ziyue calmly took the inheritance stone steel in his hand. Chapter 636. How is this possible? Zhang Dongsheng was slightly shocked. Although his sword qi technique was just a test, and he did not use much power, it could only be cracked by an expert of the 2nd tier of the intermediate golden core stage. However, Ziwe not only cracked the sword chi restriction this time, but he also looked relaxed. Didn't this mean that his true strength was above the second tier of the intermediate golden core stage? This really made him a little moved. One had to know that even when he was in the early golden core stage, his battle strength was only barely at the first tier of the intermediate golden core stage. However, many things could only be done once, and it would not be good for him to attack again to test something. However, in the end, he thought more highly of Ziwe, and his smile was much more cordial. The eyes of the others flickered, and they also showed more respect. In the world of immortal spells, the strong were always more eye-catching. Ziwe's strength was enough to make most people respect him. In this regard, Ziwe himself was much more indifferent. The sword chi restriction that the Jiuju Sword King casually used was naturally effective against ordinary cultivators in the early golden core stage, and they could easily detect the opponent's strength. However, Ziwe's strength was not weaker than the Jiuju Sword King's. If he used all his battle strength, he might be able to crush the Jiuju Sword King. How could this method that was only equivalent to the intermediate golden core stage be able to shake him? Because he knew that there was a fixed time limit in this inheritance stone tablet, Ziwe did not stay in the main hall for long, and quickly stayed in a courtyard under the arrangements of the attendants. Dao Technique Inheritance, Jiuju Sword Technique. Ziwe looked at the inheritance stone tablet in front of him, and he was slightly excited. At this point, ordinary Abhijnas and great Abhijnas could no longer satisfy his requirements, and the increase in his strength was also extremely limited. However, Dao techniques were completely different. The heaven patching technique had raised his strength by a level. The new Dao technique, Jiuju Sword Technique, was an offensive Dao technique. Once he mastered it, and even raised it to perfection, the increase in his strength would definitely be far greater than the heaven patching technique. Following which, he didn't hesitate any longer. With a thought, his divine sense swept upwards slightly. A layer of special restriction fluctuations rose. The moment his divine sense pierced through it, a rainbow light rushed out. Blood Oath. It was an oath-type restriction to prevent Dao techniques from being leaked. Ziwe was already prepared for this, and he hurriedly used the myriad spirit extermination technique. It was worth mentioning that as his cultivation level soared, especially when he used the 10,000 spirits immortal dispersal to dispel several inheritances of the 9-star Dao Palace. Therefore, he deliberately used the Dao comprehension time again to optimize the myriad spirits immortal dismemberment technique. Now, he had finally upgraded it to a divine ability. Because of this, even though the blood oath contained in the 9 extinction sword was clearly much stronger than the blood oath he had obtained from the inheritance of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, it was still quickly worn down and removed by him. Following this, he extended his divine sense into the stone tablet of succession. In an instant, the cultivation method of the 9 extinction godly sword quickly flowed into his mind and was accepted and memorized by him. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, half an hour later, Ziwe slowly opened his eyes. As expected of a Dao technique, it is indeed extremely exquisite. According to the records in the inheritance, the 9 extinction godly sword can be divided into 9 great divine abilities. These 9 swordsmanship grand mystiques were exquisite and powerful. There was an unparalleled offensive sword, and there was also a defensive sword that could block all things. There was also a trapping sword like the 5 Emperors' Heaven-Sealing Sword, a sword that could travel thousands of miles and explore infinitely. However, although these 9 swordsmanship grand mystiques were called 9 swords, when combined into one, it was actually one sword. Attack and defense in one, it can kill countless enemies, and it can take the head of a person from thousands of miles away. Ziwe silently comprehended and analyzed, and soon came to a conclusion. Then his eyes burst with light. The Dao technique I created, the heaven patching technique, is a kind of perfection of the many techniques and great divine abilities that I have mastered in the past. However, no matter how I perfect it or how I repair it, Under the effect of the heaven patching technique, my attack and defense cannot exceed the limit of a great divine ability. For example, the Great Magnetic Slash is a peerless great divine ability that contains 1,203 apertures. However, even if I cultivate it to perfection, I can only use 1,203 apertures to activate this great divine ability. Therefore, when I use this great divine ability, only 1,203 streams of Jindan essence will enter it at the same time. And if I use the heaven mending art to supplement it, when I use the great essence-fused magnetic slash, there will be a total of 1,296 strands of core essence pouring in at the same time. In addition to the number of strands of core essence, the perfected Great Tao will immediately cause the power of this great divine power to increase by another level. Therefore, in terms of increasing my strength, the heaven patching technique is not as good as the 9 extinction godly sword. This is because once I cultivate this Tao technique to perfection, its power will immediately exceed the limit of a great divine ability. At that time, it will not be impossible for a golden core to kill a nascent soul cultivator. Ziyue's heart was surging. He was very clear about the significance of an offensive Tao technique to his strength increase. The only problem is that the cultivation of this Tao technique is much more difficult than that of a great divine ability. In particular, the 9 extinction godly sword requires the combination of 9 precious materials to be able to reach the basic level. Among the golden core cultivators, there are probably very few who can cultivate it to the basic level. At most, they can only reach the initial level. This is because, apart from the difficulty of understanding during cultivation, the cost is too great. Ziyue frowned. However, he did not care too much. This was because, although the cost was great, he only needed to cultivate it to the basic level. It was already much easier than most cultivators. Activate the time of enlightenment. Immediately after, his thoughts moved again, and he began to thoroughly comprehend this Tao technique. Previously, he had only received this technique, but if he wanted to completely memorize and understand it, he would also need to spend time. At this time, an ordinary golden core cultivator would need at least 3 to 5 days. Therefore, although the 9 extinction sword king, Zhang Dongsheng, seemed generous and gave away the Tao technique inheritance, he only gave people half a day to comprehend it. In fact, very few cultivators could grasp the essence of this Tao technique. At the very least, it would be difficult to completely learn the entire Tao technique. However, this was not a problem for Ziyue. Under the time of enlightenment, his thoughts soared, his comprehension and understanding increased greatly. Naturally, he could easily comprehend the entire Tao technique. Chapter 637. The enlightenment time began. In an instant, he felt that his thoughts, perception, spirit, soul, comprehension of heaven and earth, comprehension, and all his senses had improved countless times at this moment. When all the information about Tao techniques and the 9 extinction godly sword appeared in his mind again, many of the areas that he had doubts about, or the intricacies that were difficult to understand, seemed to have been explained in an instant. With all kinds of strange ideas and thoughts colliding, it was as if he had the help of the gods. He easily understood all the difficult parts of the Tao technique. Then, with the collision in his mind, it was as if he was blessed with good fortune and completely comprehended it. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 3 hours later, Ziyue slowly opened his eyes. Suddenly, a calm expression appeared on his face. At this moment, he had a kind of confidence, and his understanding of many of the mysteries of swordsmanship had also risen to an extremely profound level. With his current vision, when he looked at the one sword technique that he had mastered, he could find many flaws in it. He could see many subtle ways of using it that could greatly increase its power with simple improvements. One sword technique is, after all, just a divine ability. It is exquisite, but lacking in power. It has gradually become unsuitable for me to use. The increase in my strength is also extremely limited. It is only because I have this 9 Extinction God sword now that I have this Tao technique. Otherwise, I would really want to find a great sword technique to replace it. Ziyue's thoughts turned up, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Instead of looking for a new, great divine ability to cultivate, it would be better for me to spend a little time and use the one sword technique as the foundation and the many mysteries of the 9 Extinction sword technique as the nourishment to optimize and improve the grade of this divine ability. After all, the 9 Extinction sword technique was far more difficult to cultivate than ordinary great divine abilities, and it was not something that could be learned in a short time. Moreover, this time I joined Zhang Dongxing's team. There are also familiar people like the sword-pushing sage and the spirit wine sage. It would be inappropriate for me to use the magnetic slash and the 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing sword technique, and my identity would be exposed. It would be better to use this one sword technique to fight against the enemy. I believe that with my ability, so long as it isn't an expert at the peak of the Golden Core realm or above, it's absolutely impossible to force me to use any other ability. Thinking of this, Ziyue no longer hesitated. His gaze fell on the attribute panel, and he tapped on it again. Activate Tao Comprehension Time. In an instant, Ziyue's body shook, and he immediately entered a state of enlightenment. As his thoughts drifted, the cultivation method of one sword breaking all laws was refined by him. At the same time, the countless accumulations, foundations, all kinds of divine abilities, great divine abilities, all kinds of cultivation methods, spells, great Tao laws, all of them surged in his heart, quickly and violently colliding in his mind. Of course, the most important thing was the exquisite usage of the 9 Extinction divine sword. After all, the 9 Extinction godly sword was a Tao technique legacy. The operating principle within it was extremely brilliant. The understanding and application of the Tao of heaven and earth was beyond imagination. There were many things that, even though he had used the enlightenment time to sort out and had some understanding, he had not truly understood them. Even so, he could still use them and add them to the great swordsmanship that he wanted to create. As time passed, Ziyue's eyes gradually revealed a trace of confidence. This was because he had a premonition that he would definitely succeed in creating the technique this time. His accumulation was too deep and profound. The great divine abilities that he had cultivated to the complete realm, and the understanding of the Tao law fragments that they contained were all his foundations. The previous accumulation, the operating principles of various cultivation methods, were usually hidden in the depths of his memory. However, at this time, when he was in the enlightenment time, they all emerged and naturally grew, evolving into an extraordinary great swordsmanship. Boom! At this moment, a dull tremor suddenly came out. Ziyue suddenly opened his eyes. Immediately, he saw that the 9 Extinction godly sword inheritance stone tablet in front of him was suddenly shattered and destroyed. No one could remember the slightest bit of information about the cultivation method of the 9 Extinction godly sword from it. At this moment, Ziyue naturally woke up and stopped the enlightenment time. The collapse of the inheritance stone tablet caused such a big commotion. If at this time the divine consciousness is still attached to the inheritance stone tablet, won't the divine consciousness be shaken? Ziyue's face was slightly ugly. Thinking about it carefully, this was something that was bound to happen. That was because other cultivators did not have the time to comprehend the Tao like him, and completely received and comprehended the entire Tao technique inheritance in a short period of time. Under the situation where they felt that they did not have much time, they would definitely use all their divine consciousness to explore it and crazily memorize the wonders of it. At this time, when the inheritance stone tablet suddenly collapsed, the cultivator's divine consciousness would definitely be shaken. Under the confusion of their thoughts, the cultivator who had originally memorized 50% of the cultivation method would probably only be able to recall 30% at most. The so-called 9 Extinction Sword King is just so. His actions seem generous, but there are too many schemes in it. Ziyue's eyes were slightly cold, and his evaluation of the 9 Extinction Sword King lowered by a few degrees. No wonder when he was in the main hall previously, he saw that although the other cultivators were respectful towards the 9 Extinction Sword King, there was an additional hint of complexity in their eyes occasionally. To be able to form a golden core, which one of them was not quick-witted and cunning. Naturally, they were clear about the schemes in it. It was just that they had agreed readily previously, and the 9 Extinction Sword King was, after all, strong after all. He also kept his promise to give the inheritance of the Tao technique and did not go back on his words. That was why they had no choice but to participate in it. Narrowing his eyes, started the enlightenment time again and started to create the technique again. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Yue seemed to be unable to feel the passage of time, and his mind was spinning rapidly. The changes in the outside world, the rise and fall of the sun and moon, could not affect him at all. Suddenly, Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes, and a hint of joy gradually appeared in them. This technique has finally been created by me. Originally, Ziyue only wanted to slightly increase his means of fighting against enemies, so as not to expose his identity as Taoist North Deep or Taoist Kunlun. However, he did not expect that his rich accumulation would suddenly burst out so violently. Under the collision of inspiration, not only did he directly create this sword immortal great divine ability, but the great divine ability that he created was a peerless great divine ability that was completely compatible with himself and contained the number of Yuan acupoints. This peerless great divine ability was created with one sword breaking all techniques as the foundation. I'll name it one sword breaking all techniques. As for the power of this sword, Ziyue muttered. With a thought, the North Deep flying sword in front of him trembled violently. Chapter 638. However, after thinking for a while, Ziyue kept his flying sword. After all, he was in someone else's territory now. Naturally, he could not test the power of his great mystique as he wished. However, he was extremely confident. He was sure that the power of this new one sword to break all spells was definitely beyond his imagination. At the same cultivation level, it was at least a level stronger than the great magnetic slash. After all, the one sword to break all spells was his own creation. It was most suitable for him. Moreover, it was a peerless great mystique that contained the method of operating 1,296 acupoints. When I tested it in the Dreamland Immortal Residence, the great magnetic slash at the perfect level was comparable to the first level of the peak of the Golden Elixir Realm. Only with the addition of the godly Dharma body could it be comparable to a regal realm cultivator. Only with the addition of the heaven patching technique could it possess the offensive power of a half-step primordial soul realm cultivator or even a slightly weaker primordial soul realm cultivator. However, the one sword to break all spells that I created myself is a perfect peerless great mystique. Together with the addition of the power of my flying sword, once it reaches the perfect level, its power will definitely surpass the great magnetic slash. It will be comparable to the all-out attack of a top regal realm cultivator. With the addition of the godly Dharma body, its power will also soar, reaching an unimaginable level. However, because this great mystique has already reached the perfect level and contains 1,296 acupoints, my heaven patching technique will not be able to enhance this great mystique in any way. Ziyue's eyes glowed as he analyzed the situation. The one sword to break all spells was a peerless great mystique that contained the method of operating 1,296 acupoints. It was perfect and flawless. Naturally, it could not be supplemented by the heaven patching technique. Correspondingly, this perfect great mystique that he created himself would also leap forward. It would definitely replace the great magnetic slash and become his #1 attack technique. Then, Ziyue's gaze turned slightly and landed on the stats panel. Indeed, he saw that the one sword to break all spells had stopped at the top of the list of great mystiques. Moreover, it was at the beginner stage. He could use his spiritual energy to upgrade it at any time. He was certain. He didn't hesitate. With a thought, he quickly focused his attention on it. By consuming 10 million soul energy, you can raise the perfect, peerless divine ability. One sword breaks all laws, from beginner level to small success. This one sword breaks all laws is incomparably tyrannical. Similarly, the amount of spiritual energy it consumes to reach small success in this technique is far greater than that of ordinary great divine abilities. 10 million can only be considered a small success. If I want to raise it to perfection, won't I need 70 million? Ziyue's gaze fell on the one sword breaking all laws, and a pained expression appeared on his face. Previously, he had used Tao comprehension time to create this great divine ability, so he didn't really care about the consumption of a few million souls. However, if he wanted to make it as powerful as he had imagined, he would have to use up 70 million soul points, which made him hesitate. Although he had a lot of spiritual energy now, he couldn't withstand such consumption. Most importantly, although this perfect, peerless divine ability could increase his strength to a certain extent, it couldn't bring about an earth-shattering change to his strength and raise it to another level. However, this one sword breaks all laws was created by me, so it's most suitable for me. It's also a great divine ability that fits the technique I cultivate. It can already be considered one of my foundational techniques. It can also be used as a trump card. Whatever, although 70 million soul energy is a lot, it's not like I can't afford it. If I overthink, I'll lose myself. Ziyue was deep in thought, and a look of determination flashed across his eyes. Following this, he no longer hesitated and quickly chose to raise it. In that instant, it was as if there was a mysterious force from above the 9 heavens that flowed into his body. Immediately, he felt that a large amount of cultivation experience regarding the one sword breaks all laws flashed through his mind. This was because this perfect, peerless, divine ability was originally created by him. Regarding this, his mind was clear, and he only used it as a proof. However, at the same time, he instantly felt as if he had gone through tens or hundreds of years of continuous cultivation. He knew the many uses of this great divine ability like the back of his hand, and he directly raised the one sword breaks all laws to the minor accomplishment stage. The minor accomplishment stage, one sword breaks all laws, is already quite powerful. If I use it with all my strength, it shouldn't be weaker than any cultivator in the later stage of the Golden Elixir realm. Ziyue thought to himself. His eyes narrowed, and he shouted in a low voice. Continue. Consume 20 million soul energy to raise the perfect, peerless, divine ability. One sword breaks all laws from the minor accomplishment stage to the great accomplishment stage. Consume 40 million soul energy to raise the perfect, peerless, divine ability. One sword breaks all laws from the great accomplishment stage to the great accomplishment stage. Raise. Ziyue continued to raise the divine ability. As he thought, the energy in his body suddenly changed, and a sharp and terrifying aura rose. It was as if a suppressed sword energy was about to shoot out, causing the air to tremble slightly. The one sword breaks all laws has reached the great accomplishment stage. My strength has also increased to a certain extent. Ziyue thought to himself, and his gaze fell on the stats panel again. He narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "However, my soul energy has also decreased correspondingly. Now, I only have 200 million left." The sky brightened and the sun rose. Everything began to awaken. A group of more than 10 cultivators with auras as deep as the sea. Each of their movements seemed to contain Tao. They stepped on the air and flew out of Star Yuan Immortal City like sharp rays of light, flying into the distance. This group of cultivators was led by the Emperor Expert Zhang Dongsheng, and they were preparing to head to the Star Source Divine Mountain with Ziyue and the others. Apart from the Emperor Expert 9 Extremes Sword King Zhang Dongsheng, there was 1 peak stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivator, 2 late stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivators, 5 mid stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivators, and the remaining 7 early stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivators. Ziyue, true Lord Push Sword, and the others were among the 7 early-stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivators. Of course, even though they were all early-stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivators, when they unleashed their full strength, they had the strength of a 3rd-tier mid-stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivator. They were definitely not weak. In fact, those who could reach the Golden Elixir Realm were not weak. Let's go. 9 Extreme Sword King and the others are finally going. The Star Source Divine Mountain's aura has been strange recently. I think it will not be long before there will be a riot, and the danger will increase greatly. Of course, the chances of treasures appearing will also increase greatly. Forget it, let's go too. Yes, let's go. Fortune comes from danger. The moment Bai Ziyue and the rest charged out. The eyes of countless cultivators in Star Yuan Immortal City flickered with excitement as they left their residences one after another. Chapter 639. Among these cultivators, the weakest one was at the enlightened Immortal Spell Realm. Similarly, there was no lack of Divine Realm or Golden Core Realm experts. Countless cultivators gathered and rushed out like a torrent. In a short period of time, the entire Star Source Immortal City was half empty, and it became somewhat sparse. Outside the city, countless cultivators converged. Some were in groups of 3 to 5, while others were in groups of 10. More than 10 enlightened realm cultivators formed a formation. With their cooperation, they could unleash an immortal spell realm that was comparable to an early divine realm expert. Hundreds of cultivators in enlightened aperture realm were gathered together. They were also a powerful force. Although Star Source Divine Mountain was full of danger, it was only the outermost area. For enlightened realm cultivators, it was not a place of absolute death. There might be star golden stones in it, and they were also extremely valuable to many low-level cultivators. This time, there are a lot of cultivators following us to Star Source Divine Mountain. One of the cultivators in Bai Ziyue's group turned around and sighed. That's right. Star Source Divine Mountain is a dangerous place for many people, but it's also a place where opportunities gather. Putting the outermost area aside, the Star Origin Stones and Star Source Divine Jades in the first level and the Star Fruits in the second level are all valuable items. They're the opportunities that countless cultivators rely on to survive. Not to mention, in the third level, there might be Dao flowers that can create something out of nothing and open a cultivator's acupoints. In the fourth level, there's the Book of the Great Dao that is said to be able to deduce all formations. In the fifth level, there's the Clock of Time that can control the flow of time and the flow of time. Which cultivator would not be tempted after hearing about all of these? This time, with us scouting ahead, the danger is greatly reduced. Naturally, there will be many cultivators who want a share of the loot. However, Star Source Divine Mountain is called a dangerous place. It's not as simple as they think. Immediately after, an old man sneered and replied in a low voice. Ziyue flew silently and glanced at the two people who spoke. Although he had only interacted with them for a short period of time, he had already confirmed the origins and titles of all the cultivators present. The one who spoke first was perfected cultivator Zhongshan, who was in the early stage of the Golden Core realm. It was said that he came from the Mountain River sect, a top sect. The elder who spoke later was the only expert at the peak of the Golden Core realm other than Zhang Dongshan. His name was perfected cultivator Tianjian, who was also from the Heavenly Spirit sect. His strength was unparalleled, and his aura soared. He was several times stronger than ordinary cultivators. It was said that he was only one step away from becoming a titled emperor. It was just that this step was like heaven and earth, trapping him for countless years. The Dao flower on the third floor, the Dao book on the fourth floor, the time bell on the fifth floor. Although there was a precious treasure like the Bell of Time on the fifth level, it was the most dangerous place in the world. The number of primordial soul realm experts who had died, there was no less than 10. With my strength, there's simply no possibility of getting involved. As for the Dao flower on the third floor and the Dao book on the fourth floor, One can increase the number of acupoints a cultivator can ignite, while the other can deduce cultivation techniques. Especially the Tao book, it's something I must get on this trip. Even if I can't really get the Tao book, I must have a chance to deduce cultivation techniques with the help of the Tao book. Bai Ziyue's mind spun as he thought of the objective of this trip. This time, he decided to participate in this trip not only because of the Tao technique inheritance and the 9 extinction divine sword, but also because of the Tao book on the 4th floor of the Star Source Holy Mountain. This was an opportunity to deduce cultivation techniques with the help of the Tao book. His Golden Core Realm cultivation technique was now in its embryonic form, but it still needed time and many other Golden Core Realm cultivation techniques to be perfected. It was impossible for him to do it in a short period of time. Therefore, the Tao book on the 4th floor of the Star Source Holy Mountain was his goal this time. On the contrary, although he was interested in treasures like the Tao flower with miraculous functions, because he had ignited all his acupoints, he wasn't so desperate to get it. Next, Ziyue and the others advanced quickly under Zhang Dongxing's lead. Look, we've arrived at the Star Source Holy Mountain. Soon, everyone saw a huge mountain that seemed to connect heaven and earth in the distance. It was majestic, and it was tens of thousands of feet wide. It was like a celestial mountain on the horizon, and it suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The Star Source Holy Mountain. That was the Star Source Holy Mountain. Ziyue's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but be slightly shocked. The reason for that was because the mountain was simply too enormous and too tall. It was like a giant pillar that connected heaven and earth and held up the void. That kind of heaviness, that kind of solemnity made him involuntarily feel small in his heart. This Star Source Holy Mountain is said to be an object of the upper world. It was a divine mountain that fell directly from beyond the heavens 50,000 years ago. The interior is hollow and divided into 5 floors. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it is. The first 2 levels are nothing to Golden Core Realm cultivators like us, and they're practically of no threat at all. But once you set foot on the 3rd floor, there will be star beasts comparable to Golden Core cultivators. This was especially true when the Divine Mountain was in a riot. Many small hidden spaces within the Star Origin Divine Mountain opened up and revealed themselves. Naturally, star beasts took this opportunity to rush out and wreak havoc. In addition, there will be countless strange winds, foul rain, thunder, and even space cracks. It's extremely dangerous. As for the 4th and 5th floors, there will be star beasts comparable to primordial spirit cultivators. Even primordial spirit cultivators will be at risk of death if they enter. Therefore, we must be careful this time. Looking at the Star Source Holy Mountain in the distance, Zhang Dongsheng stood still slightly. Yao Yao looked at everyone and said loudly, "Fortunately, our target is only the 3rd floor of the Star Source Holy Mountain. There will at most be star beasts comparable to regal emperors in the 3rd floor. Although such beasts aren't weak, they are naturally cruel and have limited intelligence. The threat they pose is far less than a true regal emperor's. The only variable. I'm sure all of you have heard that the Star Source Holy Mountain is about to go berserk. But as long as we are careful and don't rush in and follow my instructions throughout, I'm sure our safety will be guaranteed. I think that at this time, no one will want to back out, right?" As he said that, he smiled slightly and squinted his eyes, sizing up everyone. As the divine light flashed, a huge pressure surged towards them. Everyone's hearts sank and their faces tightened. They hurriedly waved their hands and said, "How can that be? Senior, you've even let us observe the Tao technique. Why would we do such a despicable thing? Senior Zhang, don't worry. We will do our best to find the heaven-wielding bottle for you and fulfill our promise." Chapter 640. Everyone's heart skipped a beat, and they hurriedly spoke up. That would be for the best. Zhang Dongsheng snorted softly and said. Ziyue's expression did not change, but he was sizing up the huge Star Source sacred mountain in the distance. The entire mountain was too tall and huge. However, when he was sizing it up, he vaguely felt a trace of human refinement. His expression changed, and he asked in a low voice, "Could this star source sacred mountain have been refined? Although I can't be sure, all the major mortal sects have come to a conclusion. This star source sacred mountain is definitely a precious treasure refined by a mighty figure from the upper realm. It could be a precious treasure in a grotto heaven, or it could simply be a huge sacred mountain that was specially formed by heaven and earth, and then refined by a mighty cultivator into a huge mountain seal. I heard that there was once a top primordial soul realm expert who attacked the main body of the sacred mountain with monstrous means, but was unable to shake it at all. Instead, that primordial soul realm expert was severely injured by the backlash, and it took him 100 years to recover from his injuries. Therefore, this star source sacred mountain is known as one of the most dangerous places. Flying next to Ziyue was perfected Lord Lingcoffin. He smiled kindly at Ziyue and explained, "In fact, the star source sacred mountains riot once every 30 years. The spirit chi of heaven and earth within a radius of a few thousand miles will rapidly surge toward the star source sacred mountain as if it is water being sucked in by a giant dragon. In the sacred mountain, various hidden spaces and grotto heavens will also continue to open at this moment. I have to say that it is indeed similar to some precious treasures that have gained sentience and will automatically absorb the spirit chi of heaven and earth to improve their own characteristics." Perfected Lord Pushing Sword, who was at the side, hurriedly said. The two of them were very clear about the danger level of the Star Source Sacred Mountain, especially when the Star Source Sacred Mountain was in a riot. Just the third level alone could cause the death of a regal soul realm expert. Naturally, while being careful, they would try their best to befriend experts of the same realm. Both of them had seen Ziyue's means. Although they were not sure of his strength, in their opinion, he was definitely an extraordinary battle force and was naturally worth roping in. Perhaps a kind explanation at this moment could be exchanged for the other party's help at a critical moment. Although they didn't want all of this to come true, they didn't lose anything by wasting their breath. Why wouldn't they do it? Now that you mention it, it does seem like it. Bai Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. He thought of his life source magic treasure, the Northern Dark Flying Sword. Even though it was very weak, he could still feel that it was slowly strengthening his essence with every breath. Compared to the Star Origin Sacred Mountain, there were indeed some similarities. While they were speaking, the group continued to fly forward, and the distance between them and the Star Origin Sacred Mountain continued to decrease. Then, at a certain moment, everyone felt their bodies sink as if there was a heavy weight on their bodies, and their speed slowed down to a certain extent. This is the gravity domain of the Stellar Origin God Mountain. It means that we are already within 500 kilometers of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. No matter who it was, they would be affected by the gravity of the Stellar Origin Divine Mountain, and their strength would be weakened to a certain extent. The deeper one went into the Star Source Divine Mountain, the greater the influence of gravity. In the outer region, the gravity is only 10 times stronger. When one enters the first level, it will be 20 times stronger, the second level will be 40 times stronger, and the third level will be 80 times stronger. When one enters the third level, it will be difficult for God Realm cultivators to rise into the air. When one enters the third level, it will be extremely difficult for one to walk. Once one encounters a star beast, one will almost certainly die. Only Golden Core Realm cultivators like us can fly freely with the support of the domain. On the fourth level, the gravity domain will be 160 times stronger. Even if we Golden Core Realm cultivators enter, we will most likely die. Only Primordial Soul Realm cultivators can guarantee a certain degree of safety. As for the fifth level, it is said that the gravity domain will directly soar to 500 times stronger. Even Primordial Soul Realm cultivators will be in danger if they enter. Over the years, there have definitely been many Primordial Soul Realm cultivators who have died in there. Sky Sword Supreme, who was at the front, said in a low voice. Everyone was very clear about this point, and they didn't say anything. Although there was an additional layer of gravity on their bodies, it was nothing to them who had reached the Golden Core realm. It also didn't affect their strength much. Even their speed, under the slight vibration of the Jindan energy in their bodies, it didn't affect them much. Of course, this was only 10 times the gravity. If it was 80 times the gravity on the third level and 160 times the gravity on the fourth level, they wouldn't be able to do it so easily. Because of that degree of gravity, under the continuous consumption of their Jindan energy, they wouldn't be able to maintain it for a long time. 800 li, 500 li, 300 li. The group continued to approach. The closer they got, the more they looked at the huge star source sacred mountain in front of them, the more they felt that they were insignificant. When they stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the top of the mountain that pierced through the clouds, even Ziwei felt a sense of shock in his heart. He had originally thought that the Qingshu mountain range of the Qingshu sect was already considered towering. Especially after the level of the spiritual vein was upgraded, the mountain continued to grow and became even larger and more majestic. In 100,000 great mountains, there were very few huge mountains that he had seen or heard of that could compare to it. However, when he compared it to the star source sacred mountain, he finally understood what it meant to be vast and majestic. Compared to it, the Qingshu mountain was like a short mountain, not even reaching half of its height. Then, Ziwei and the others soon saw a huge entrance. The entrance looked like the mouth of a mountain monster. It was pitch black, empty, and deep. Vaguely, there were gusts of strange cold wind blowing out. If others saw it, they would definitely feel scared and wouldn't dare to approach at all. Of course, they didn't have such a problem. Come, let's go in. Zhang Dongsheng took the lead and shouted in a low voice. Without any hesitation, he rushed in quickly. Heaven Sword Perfected Lord followed closely behind. Then, there was a late Jindan stage practitioner called True Lord Juju. He was also a disciple of the Heavenly Spirit sect. This time, among the people from the Heavenly Spirit sect, except for Wu Lushui, who was only at the God stage and was waiting in the Star Source Immortal City, there were 3 other Jindan stage practitioners. 9 Extremes Sword King Zhang Dongsheng, Heaven Sword True Lord who was at the peak of the Jindan stage, and True Lord Juju who was at the late Jindan stage. Following that were the many cultivators who had been conscripted this time. True Lord Shiyu, the master of the Mount Jinhuan, True Lord Zhu Yongjin who is said to have extraordinary swordsmanship, Taoist Drunken Beard, True Lord Gao Feng, and True Lord Wu Yu from the Heavenly Mist sect, True Lord Ling Coffin, and True Lord Push Sword from the Qingshu sect. Of course, there was also True Lord Five Kills, who had changed his appearance and aura, Ziwei. Star Source Sacred Mountain? Not long after Ziwei and the others stepped into the Star Source Sacred Mountain, an extremely beautiful female practitioner in an orange robe suddenly rushed out of the Star Source Immortal City. Her eyes were clear and cold, exuding a faintly discernible chill. With a flash of his body, he charged towards the Star Origin Sacred Mountain. Gasp! Look, is that Dream Immortal King? Yes, it's Dream Immortal King. Dream Immortal King appeared in the Star Source Immortal City. She's heading toward Star Source Sacred Mountain. Has Dream Immortal King decided to go to the Star Source Sacred Mountain as well? Didn't I hear that Dream Immortal King's younger brother, Li Mengqian, was killed? Is that why she came out of seclusion and traveled all over the place to hunt down the expert who killed Li Mengqian? Why is she here? Did True Lord Dark North, who killed Li Mengqian, come to the Star Source Sacred Mountain as well? That's going to be interesting. However, the Star Origin Sacred Mountain is incomparably enormous and spacious. Furthermore, there is a difference between the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth levels. If they were to fight on the third level or above, then I reckon that we would not be able to witness the battle. Some of the cultivators with sharp eyes noticed Li Mengqian's figure and exclaimed in surprise. Dream Immortal King was the most talented super genius in the Gusha Mountain range in the past thousands of years. She had reached the peak of the Golden Core realm before the age of 100, and her battle strength was bestowed the title of king. Not only did her name spread throughout the entire Gusha Mountain range, but even in the entire firmament territory, many people had heard of her name. Her appearance naturally caused a commotion among the people, and they started discussing. Battle? You've overestimated true Lord Dark North. Dream Immortal King is a king expert. That true Lord Dark North can only pray that he doesn't encounter her, or he'll definitely die. Some of the practitioners could not help but criticize true Lord Dark North. Indeed, there are less than 10 king experts in the entire firmament territory. Even though true Lord Dark North has a certain reputation in the cloud-piercing mountain range, he's nothing compared to Dream Immortal King. Once he encounters her, he'll definitely die. Another practitioner agreed, but soon he changed his tone and said, however, don't forget that there's Sword King Joju in the Star Source Sacred Mountain. As the saying goes, kings don't meet kings. If they want to meet, there'll definitely be a battle. This time, if the two king experts want to meet, there'll be an unavoidable battle. What I'm really curious about is who will win and who will lose. A battle between king experts will definitely be earth-shattering. If we're lucky enough to witness this battle, we'll have no regrets. Instantly, the group of practitioners lamented. Master, is true Lord Dark North really in the Star Source Sacred Mountain? Two practitioners, one in front and one behind, were flying rapidly in the void. Gazing into the distance, a towering mountain that seemed to be able to support the entire world appeared before their eyes. These two were Demon Emperor Wahai and his master, Forefather Kuche. I don't know either. However, the Star Source Sacred Mountain is about to erupt, and so many experts are gathering. It's a grand event. That true Lord Dark North is very likely to appear in the Sacred Mountain. If he's really so cautious and avoids this grand event, then we'll have to return and report back. Forefather Kuche sighed softly and said, go back and report back? If we can't capture and kill true Lord Dark North, won't Matriarch Bloodforge take my life when she blames us? I won't go back. I won't go back anyway. If you want to go back, you'll have to go back by yourself. Upon hearing that, Demon Lord Guahai's body trembled. His heart felt weak as he shook his head. Don't worry, Wu Xin and the others. Although Matriarch Bloodforge valued you, you've already died. Naturally, no one would pursue the matter too much if he died and his Tao vanished. Besides, don't you have me to protect you? Forefather Kuche glanced sideways at his disciple and said, you'll protect me? Demon Emperor Guahai's expression immediately turned bitter. He knew that although his master was also a primordial spirit realm expert, his position in the sect was the lowest among the primordial spirit realm ancestors. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent here to carry out the mission with Matriarch Bloodforge. It would be fine if everything went smoothly this time, but if true Lord Dark North really did escape, the two of them would have a hard time together. That said, true Monarch Dark North has caused quite a stir this time. Even the Dream Immortal King has come out of seclusion and is hunting him down. I heard that she just so happened to appear in the vicinity of Star Origin Sacred Mountain recently. Given her methods and the fact that the one who died was her kin, if she uses her bloodline vengeful spirit tracking technique, true Lord Dark North won't be able to hide from her for at least a month, even if he has the means to isolate himself from the heavens. In other words, true Lord Dark North is definitely near Star Origin Sacred Mountain. We just need to find Dream Immortal King and follow her. It shouldn't be hard to find true Lord Dark North. Old Ancestor Bitter Lettuce chuckled mischievously. Is that so? Demon Monarch Guahai's eyes lit up and he chuckled. When we're done with true Lord Dark North, why don't you capture Dream Immortal King as well? I heard that she's not only a peerless genius in the cultivation world, but also a top-notch celestial immortal in the immortal art world. When the time comes, you'll get to drink the soup, and I'll take advantage of it. You're dreaming, but it's not impossible. Forefather Kuche's wrinkled face quickly bloomed like a chrysanthemum flower. The two of them were demonic cultivators, so they acted without restraint. They didn't feel the slightest discomfort when doing such a thing. They felt that it was normal. Star Origin Immortal City, 9-star Tao Palace. An old man stood with his hands behind his back. Behind him stood a middle-aged cultivator with a profound aura. This middle-aged cultivator was the palace lord of 9-star Dao Palace's branch, true Lord Lu Liang. True monarch Lu Liao was a late-stage golden core cultivator, but at this moment he seemed to be trembling with fear and respect. It was clear that this old man wasn't simple. He was a primordial spirit realm ancestor. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.